Make-A-Wish workers, what were the wishes you said no to? Story 1. I received a wish when I was 15. At that time, I was madly in love with Harry Styles and of course wanted to use my wish to meet him and spend the day with him. After telling the wish coordinator this, she broke the news to me that if I were to meet him, it would be a year from then with about 15 other kids for a very brief moment, a hello and a photo. Upon hearing that disappointing news, I changed my wish and instead went to Australia for 10 days with my family and swam in the Great Barrier Reef. Just for some background, both my sister and I are pretty damn sick, and so we had the rare occasion where we both got wishes. My family suggested that we just do one, but Make-A-Wish was adamant that we each got our own. My sister's Make-A-Wish was to meet Taylor Swift. We flew to Nebraska for 2 days, got in the same meet and greet line as people who won radio contests, took a picture with Taylor Swift, and that was that. I, on the other hand, asked to meet Christopher Nolan. He had never been requested for a wish, so we were flown to LA where we got a tour of the Warner Brothers lot, and then had a private lunch with Nolan and Emma Thomas, his wife. We hung out for 2 hours, and they finally left because they had some film-related things to do. We found out later that he'd only agreed to an hour, but during the lunch insisted that he stayed longer. It was quite interesting how we both had celebrity wishes, and they both turned out so differently. My brother had one back in the late 90s and wanted to meet Michael Jordan. I was basically told the same thing, basically. Instead, he wished to take his family to Disney World. These are the best memories I have of my brother, being scared shirtless in the Tower of Terror where I pissed myself. Story 2. Usually the wishes we had to say no to were from the kids' family members. There was always some uncle, grandma, cousin, sibling, or parent who wanted to hijack the kid's wish. My cousin's daughter was born with a genetic disorder that left her unable to communicate, as far as I was aware, beyond just smiling at things. My cousin insisted her daughter wanted the family to go to Disney World. I'm not sure her daughter knew what Disney World was, let alone could ask to go there. My dad kinda did this. I don't want to make him seem like a bad guy, he's really generous, honestly. He just gets caught up in his ideas. But short story, when I was very little and very sick, Make-A-Wish called our house one day and he answered for me, "Disney World would be great," without even asking us. Neither my mom, who knew or knows me much better, or me. When I was told we were going, I was little enough to be excited about the prospect, but I wasn't old enough to really have wanted to go, if that makes sense. It was just after kindergarten, I think. In fairness, I was really sick at the time and no one quite knew if I would survive. I did, and I kicked the illness's ass, by the way. So on the one hand, I don't blame him. And if I were older, or if I had been asked, I may have chosen something similar, if not the same, because I didn't have true passions until teenagehood. And Disney is such a default wish that it's duh. On the other hand, I barely got to choose anything we did, even on the trip due to age plus dad plus sickness. I was too sick to enjoy the majority of it, and my mom basically protested the whole debacle by staying home. So it wasn't as fulfilling as it could have been. Plus, I was mildly traumatized by someone in a mascot costume as a toddler, so I still had a fear of costumes at that age, and there's a ton of them at Disney World. So it does happen, but it's not always malicious. I did get to experience my only roller coaster ride, though, and had other family members be unusually nice to me, so that part was cool. Make-A-Wish strongly encourages Disney World for a lot of kids, regardless, for lots of reasons. They have the Make-A-Wish Village in Florida not far from the theme parks where the families can stay. A ton of infrastructure already built around getting people there and around, as well as Disney itself has a ton of internal mechanisms for dealing with Make-A-Wish kids and their wildly variable needs, whether it's cognitive issues, physical accessibility, access for those who are immunocompromised, etc. So when they're not sure what the kid wants or the kid's other wishes aren't practical or feasible for whatever reason, they push Disney World because it's cost-effective and still something many kids and their families can enjoy, regardless of what qualifies them for Make-A-Wish. It's also something that would generally be fun for other kids in the family too. Being sick is the worst, but having a terminally or severely ill sibling is nearly as terrible. I mean, being a sick kid stuck in a hospital is awful, but it's hard for a healthy kid to also feel stuck in a hospital. They miss out on a lot of childhood experiences and attention. Make-A-Wish often tries to make wish experiences special for them, too, if possible. Disney is broadly appealing. Story 3. I got a wish as a kid, then survived. The biggest, best thing I could think of was to go to Chuck E. Cheese. I have no idea why I was fixated on that. To the credit of some good peeps to Chuck E. Cheese's, I went. I couldn't be around other people, so they opened it up at night and people deep cleaned it, sterilizing each ball in the ball pit. There was dedication there. Then, someone who was cleared medically worked it. Don't remember most of it. I was pretty young, mostly just remembering the bits I found exciting. But that damn rat casino still makes me smile whenever I see one. The moral of the story, never bet against Make-A-Wish when dealing with logistics. Every ball in the pit. I love this. A thing that most kids take for granted was such a big deal to you, and you'd think that would be a simple wish to grant. But it sounds like they thought about everything and took as much care with your wish as they would for someone going to Disney. Hey, cleaning all those balls wouldn't be so difficult, believe it or not. They would just need to dump them into a tub with some sanitizing agent, ethanol, etc., slosh them around and put them back. For sure, there wasn't a person sitting there with Lysol wipes wiping down each individual ball. Now, the ball pit itself probably took some work. Wow, that makes my heart smile. My sister and I, while going through a really rough spot in our lives due to divorce and sickness, really fell in love with the cardboard pizza, the expensive, sometimes impossible games, and the dirty slides covered in fingerprints. It became a safe haven for us, where a lot of the adult stress of the world got replaced with the fun of just being a kid again. We didn't see the faults, we just saw the chance to be young again. So glad to hear you got to have a little slice of that. Story 4. I've been the recipient, and later on, after my health improved, I volunteered as a wish coordinator. My original wish was to attend the Oscars. That was denied by the Academy as they do not grant wishes. I wound up going to the People's Choice Awards as a VIP. Make-A-Wish flew my family to LA for a week, and all expenses were paid. They got us a limo for the show and paid for my dress, hair, and makeup. We walked the red carpet and were seated very close to the stage. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. The generosity of the volunteers is remarkable. They even had someone greet us at the airport on arrival. It was extremely important to me that my brother and my sister were included in my wish, because my illness had robbed them of part of their childhoods. I am forever indebted to everyone who made my wish possible. When I turned 18, I decided to volunteer as a wish coordinator to give back to an organization that did so much for me. I met with wish kids and their families. We would always arrive with a gift for all of the children in the family based on a little survey they filled out. We'd talk with the child and help define their wish. It's important to determine the child's true wish and make sure that it isn't influenced by parents. The most common wish is to go to Disney. Celebrity meet and greets are the ones that often can be turned down. First, because it is undefined what a meet and greet is. It could be the child literally waving at someone, and no one wants that. And second, because not all celebrities grant wishes or can schedule a time to meet with kids. The coolest wish I worked on was a shopping spree for a boy who was confined to his room. He got $7,000 to go buy video games, TVs, a tricked-out lazy boy, etc. for the ultimate gaming setup. My husband was a volunteer. One time, he said he could tell the parents were pushing Disney, and he asked the kid, "Are you sure you want to go to Disney?" And he just shyly said, "Yes." He said you can't just take the kids into the kitchen to have a one-on-one chat away from their parents to really ask what they wanted. We had a little survey we'd ask the kids, and then at the end of that, we'd discuss possible wishes, and you'd ask for 3 options, in case one of them was not possible. I usually asked them to show me their favorite toys. The coordinators for my wish asked me to show them my room. It was pretty easy to tell, especially with younger kids when they wanted something totally different from their parents. The survey gave it away. If the family initially said we wanted a cruise, but the child was telling me all about his favorite train toys or something like that, we'd have to regroup and gently remind the parents who this was for. I used to work at a Sam's Club, and we had a girl with Ma come in for a shopping spree. I remember thinking, why the hell would you spend your wish on a Sam's Club trip? And then I found out that she got to go to like 5 other stores as well. And I was like, alright, respect. She was the sweetest, and like half the staff immediately dropped what they did to walk around with her and talk and help her pick stuff out. It was a great experience for us. I hope it was for her as well. I can't believe there would be celebrities who would refuse to grant a wish for a kid. If I were a celebrity, I would have no problem taking a few hours once a month to hang out with a Make-A-Wish fan. It's not much time or effort on my part, while it would mean the world to the other person. Also, to make their wish worthwhile, I would probably grant their wish to meet them and then tell them to pick another wish vacation, which I'd pay for. On the one hand, I'd be happy to meet them if their wish was to truly meet me. But no matter how famous I am, I'd feel like they wasted their wish to meet me, so I'd tell them they should also pick something additional and more worthwhile than just wasting a few hours talking to me. Alas, I am not famous and have no fans. I'm just a poor bum eating cold pasta and Brussels sprouts on a Tuesday evening. Story 5. My son was a Make-A-Wish recipient. He wanted to go to Europe. They were planning it, and his birth father wouldn't allow my kids to get passports. Great father, huh? Son had a 36% chance of survival from brain cancer, and he said no passports. Anyways, his second wish was an RV trip to the Badlands, Yellowstone, and the Rockies. They got us the biggest bus type, I think it was A-class, RV they could get. Set everything up for us, gave us itineraries, and off we went. It's such an incredible organization, and luckily my son had a blast after finally having the okay to go. He's also in remission and doing well, thank God. Making a wish is incredible. I wasn't sick, but my parents had to go to court when I was 5, so my mom could take me to visit my grandma in Florida. Note that this is back when you didn't need a passport to cross the US border, and 5-year-olds could travel on their parents' documents as long as the parent had a birth certificate. I ended up having to get a passport and a bunch of stuff notarized before I ever traveled. Trying to get in touch with someone to sign a form to renew a passport when they live on a boat is not an easy task. I had to call the Coast Guard to radio the boat between 4 and 5 p.m. so I could talk to them over CB radio. It's not really a comparable story, but sometimes people will go to ridiculous lengths to do weird, spiteful things. Story 6. A classmate of mine, now passed, got a meet and greet with Sammy Sosa. The understanding from the Make-A-Wish people was that Sammy would sign autographs and sit with the family for a while. Now this kid was all about Sammy. He had his jerseys, loved Sammy's little leaps after home runs, and if I remember correctly, even was big into Pepsi because of Sammy too. When the day came, Sammy showed up late. He didn't respond when the family greeted him. It was described as a sullen silence, signed a glove, and then walked away. My classmate started crying once it was clear Sammy was not going to come back. Right when the parents were about to leave, another baseball player named Corey Patterson saw my classmate, came up and signed everything they had, and talked and joked around with the family for over half an hour. Corey became my classmate's favorite player that day, and I think he lived perhaps a year after that moment. At his funeral, my classmate's picture with Corey was one of the prominent pictures. That moment and day truly meant the world to him. He was around 10 or 11 if I remember correctly. To this day, I'm unsure if someone from Make-A-Wish found Corey or if the moment was as spontaneous as it was described to me, but no matter what, Corey will always have a special place in my heart because of that story. I love this one because a similar experience happened with my brother. When my brother was a kid, his hero was first baseman Will Clark. He loved him and wanted to grow up to play first base for the Giants. My dad took him to a game when he was about 8 years old, and some reporter asked my brother if he'd like to meet Will Clark and get his hero's autograph. My brother was floored. He literally had tears of joy. When my brother went down with the reporter to meet his hero, Will Clark told the reporter point blank, "I don't have freaking time for kids." My brother's tears of joy became tears of devastation. He basically cried into his baseball glove and was inconsolable. Out of the blue, a bullpen catcher for the Giants, I don't even know his name, raced up to my brother and said, "I have time. Where's your ball, kid?" He signed everything and talked to my brother up until the game started. That was the day my brother decided that he wanted to be a catcher. He went on to get drafted as a catcher out of high school. This reminds me of the book The Wednesday Wars by Gary D. Schmidt. There's a scene in the book where the main character acts as Ariel in a Shakespeare play, then just books it to the place where his favorite baseball players are signing baseballs. He barely makes it on time. His bus driver was kind enough to give him a baseball, and he feels so lucky that he made it. He asks one of them to sign his baseball, and his favorite player, I think it was Mickey Mantle, turns him down because he's still wearing his costume. It was a homophobic thing. There's a line after that scene about how when gods die, they don't die silently. It's like a raging hellfire. It's a fantastic passage. Later on, the main character's middle school English teacher arranges a much cooler meetup with different baseball players, and it's a wonderful experience for the protagonist and his friends. So those who don't know, Make-A-Wish would not do a meet and greet with Sammy Sosa. How it usually works is that the Wish Kid would get to meet, in this case, the Cubs. So if Sosa was there, even better. The issue is that a lot of the players don't make time for Wish Kids, so the best wish that they can do is to meet the Yankees and not to meet A-Rod. The best sports wish I know of is where one of the Mets players picked the kid up at school, took him to the game, and then went to his mom's restaurant after the game for dinner after the game. There are a lot of really good people out there doing the right thing, but there are also a lot of people who don't care or have the time. I'm looking at you, Ina Garden. My best friend's son was about 7 and had leukemia, and we went to Angels spring training. We are huge Angels fans. When a player named Reggie Willits saw his son with his mask on, he asked him and my buddy to come down onto the field. He signed all of his gear, bat, ball, batting gloves, hats, wristbands, etc., and then asked if he wanted to go into the clubhouse. They went into the clubhouse as I waited in awe and some jealousy. If I'm being honest, when he came out, he had pictures with every player, got to meet and talk to all of them, and got tons of autographs. His kid still remembers it to this day. Such an amazing impact Mr. Willits had on him, and he will forever be one of our favorite players. I had the same wish after I had a kidney transplant, and we had the same experience. There was a group of 4 to 6 Wish kids who all got to go to the game and meet the players. Sammy had very strict rules, only sign one thing per kid, and only the kid and one family member could come talk to him at a time. It was pretty disappointing for me as a 7 to 8-year-old. However, a player saved the experience for me. Mark Grace picked me up and talked to me for a while. Met my family and was really awesome with all of us. To this day, I have the picture of me with Mark, but I am not sure where the Sammy one is. Story 7. Fun fact, the amount of kids that wish to go to Disney World is so large that Disney has its own resort for them called Give Kids the World, where only families from Make-A-Wish can stay. They have special buses to transport them, doctors are always on staff, and there are special games and activities at the resort for kids who can't make it to the park that day. I adore Make-A-Wish and everything it's done for kids. It helped send my friend to the Bahamas when she was sick, and she said it was one of the best experiences of her life. Disney did not build Give Kids the World Village. It was built by a Holocaust survivor named Henry. He ran a hotel and helped coordinate terminally ill children's stay in the Orlando area. He recognized the need for a dedicated facility after some children died waiting for rooms to become available to visit the Kennedy Space Center. All the parks and attractions in the Orlando area support the village with many programs and donations, not just Disney. I used to volunteer at Give Kids the World. It is right behind my grandparents' home in Kissimmee. That place is by far the most wholesome place I have ever had the pleasure of volunteering at. My dad and I often helped serve meals on weekends for breakfast or lunch, and a few times, I got to run the arcade and games area. Doing one of the things I love and doing it with the kids and making them smile is by far one of my favorite memories. Another one was where a young girl was in a special wheelchair and she wanted to ride the carousel. They didn't want her to get hurt riding it, but with the parents' permission, my dad hoisted her onto a horse and helped keep her steady on the ride. Her parents didn't stop thanking him afterward. It was pretty awesome. Story 8. I have experience with Make-A-Wish in the last year due to my son's condition. This was a question I asked, and the response I was given was they would do anything they could within reason. One kid wanted a swimming pool in his backyard, and they did that. Because of how the process goes with Make-A-Wish, they ask the kid a lot of questions to determine what the child wants and to ensure there isn't any influence from the parents. My wife and I sat with my son while they asked him a lot of questions over about an hour period to determine what he wanted to do. They asked my wife and I to sit there silently while he answered honestly. We are going to go to Legoland and meet Darth Vader sometime in 2019. That's so cool! My brother was in a wheelchair, and Make-A-Wish arranged a full week of Legoland for my brother, mom, cousin, and me, including a limousine to the airport, a flight to Denmark, pickup by a pirate with a Lego parrot on his shoulder, and a stay in the Lego hotel. We all had such a great time. One of the best memories of my childhood. Hope you're going to enjoy this as much as we did. I wish you, your son, and the rest of your family all the best. I helped my little cousin apply for Make-A-Wish, and her whole family was able to go to Disney World. They stayed in a special place for Make-A-Wish kids called something like The Village, and absolutely loved it. My cousin had so much fun. But yeah, the Make-A-Wish Foundation is amazing. To figure out what my cousin wanted, they had a whole interview where they asked her what she would like to do, who she'd like to meet, where she'd like to go, and what she'd like to have. And from that, they picked 4 wishes for her. Then, when they had a sponsor, they granted one of the wishes based on her health and availability, but because Disney works so well with Make-A-Wish, they were able to grant the wish with no need to go for the backups. Story 9. The kid I know got cancer in elementary school. He was always into history and US presidents, so he asked to meet him. They flew his whole family out to DC to meet George W. Bush. Also, he actually spent more time with them than was allotted in his daily planner, according to the dad. The kid beat cancer and is still doing okay. Story 10. A couple of years ago, I went to Disney in Orlando and there was a little boy running around wearing a shirt that said, "I'm a Make-A-Wish kid." My friend had to comfort me when I cried because the toddler's mom and aunt told the pretzel vendor his Make-A-Wish was originally "Make Mommy Happy." Story 11. I was really lucky to have my Make-A-Wish granted, and I just want to say they really go above and beyond. My mom has always talked about going to Hawaii, and we knew it was pretty unrealistic for our family of 4. I was pretty young when I made my wish, so I didn't even know all that Hawaii had to offer, but I chose to go there for my wish. They put us up in a penthouse suite in Waikiki Beach, and I've never experienced anything more special in my life. Everything and everyone there wanted to make sure my family had an unforgettable time, and we sure did. We were able to forget about the cancer for a little while and feel like a normal family again. Thank you so much, Make-A-Wish, and all that contributes. They did that for my family as well. I was really surprised at how much they put into it for a family of 7. My wish was to explore a coral reef, and they decided to send us to Hawaii to do it. We had a huge suite on Waikiki Beach and went on a great private ocean tour, snorkeling and diving around for a few hours, plus shopping and swimming with dolphins. It blew me away. I got out of the hospital 9 days before my trip and barely got the approval from doctors, but it was the best trip of my life. My family got to be just a normal family on vacation for a week, doing things there's no way we could have made it happen on our own. Make-A-Wish is such a great organization. Story 12. When I was in college, I had a good friend named John. We were both in the automotive industry 8 hours a day for 2 years. One day, we grabbed sushi for lunch and he casually mentioned that at 12 years old, current age of 20, he was a recipient of a wish. He asked for sushi, and just sushi. You could see his eyes light up just telling the story. They set him up with a private lunch at a local sushi bar where he had the entire selection of sushi rolls laid out in front of him with each and every possible condiment, roll, and side. It is not an expensive or grandeur request, but Make-A-Wish went above and beyond. Story 13. When I was a baby, until I was 5, I had cancer and got some wishes. My first wish was for a computer. I only wanted a computer because it came with a mouse. Yes, I thought it came with a real mouse. Obviously, it was rejected because you can't have pets when you basically live in a hospital, and my family was broke as hell anyway, so they couldn't give us a pet. I ended up getting some dope-ass googly eyeglasses and an epic trip to Disney World. It was the only family vacation we ever got to go on. On a somewhat related side note, it's an embarrassing tale to tell. Never went to Disney as a kid. Grew up on a farm and never really went on a family vacation. Did well for myself and always thought when I had kids I was going to go to Disney. In 2008, I used my bonus and went all out. Booked at the Polynesian Resort for 8 nights, booked all the character dinners 6 months in advance, I was excited to go to Whoop-De-Doo Review because each adult received 2 drinks with their meal, and I knew my wife wouldn't drink hers. And man, we went during the last week of September and it was freaking hot. We were already 4 days into that trip and I was looking forward to those cold beers. I had coordinated every detail of this trip, and in this particular show, if you don't make it in time, they don't let you in. Jumped on the monorail and we had a delay. 10 minutes, no biggie, I had compensated accordingly. Then we got off at the boat launch and boarded to be taken to the show. 25 minutes to spare for a 5-minute ride. No problem. Except, we were told that we were waiting for a group before departure. No sweat. Except, we wound up waiting 20 minutes. I am losing my crap, griping to my wife, pacing the deck and moaning to the captain. I couldn't believe we were waiting for some ignorant bastards who were holding up the other 10 people on the boat. The captain said we would depart shortly. And that's when the Make-A-Wish Foundation boarded. My wife gave me a "you idiot" look, and no word of a lie, and I mean this with no disrespect, but some young bald kid who probably did not have much time left came up to me and said that they were going on a special fireworks cruise and would I like to join them. And that is the reason why I am going to hell, kids. Story 14. My little brother has had 2 heart transplants so far and will probably get another before it's all said and done. His wish was to go to Nintendo. Well, Nintendo Japan doesn't grant wishes, but Nintendo of America does. He stayed in Seattle for a few days and had a day-long tour of Nintendo. Unfortunately, Reggie wasn't in the office that day, but the Treehouse staff led him around all day. This was right before the Switch came out, so he got to play Breath of the Wild before anyone. They gave him a sweet goodie bag and let him go on a shopping spree in the employee store. Story 15. This isn't my personal story, but of my uncle who passed away shortly after I was born. He loved the Terminator so much that he wanted nothing more than to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger. Due to having a busy schedule, Arnold's agent had to deny him his wish a couple of times. He was filming for the second Terminator. My uncle was so determined to meet Arnold that he then changed his wish to meet Maria Shriver, Arnold's wife. Because of his determination, he was allowed on the set of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. He got to meet Arnold, Maria, and Arnold's stunt double. My mom still has the pictures, and it makes my heart sore. Make-A-Wish is fantastic, and I'm so glad my uncle got to live out his dream. Story 16. I worked for Make-A-Wish, Junior Genie as I like to say. We had to say no to wishes all the time. Either the person the kid wanted to meet didn't grant wishes, the place they wanted to go to didn't grant wishes, their wish was ridiculously expensive or prohibitive, or their doctor didn't sign off on the wish as it wasn't a good idea for their health, and so on. For the most part, our volunteers were pretty good at helping kids zero in on the perfect wish. I've helped coordinate some wishes that I was surprised to see were approved. Usually it's trips to far distances with lots of stops and long stays. It's one thing to go to Japan, it's another to go to Japan for 2 weeks. It's another to go to Japan for 2 weeks and go to 10 different attractions. Not all of them give us free tickets. Many don't even give discounts. Most Wish kids had cookie-cutter wishes. Disney World, Paris, Meet the President, etc. Those were my bread and butter. I hate to call them cookie-cutter because I know it's such a precious memory for the kid and their family. Working there was a precious memory for me too, and I enjoyed coordinating everyone's trips. Unusual, frequent, high medical needs, lots of family, what have you. It was such an amazing thing to be a part of. Story 17. My son chose a Disney cruise. He didn't even hesitate in his pick, probably because we were on day 1 of a Disney cruise that we had been planning for over a year when he took a small tumble in our stateroom and wound up breaking his femur because, unbeknownst to us, his leg was filled with Ewing's sarcoma. This trip he had been looking forward to for so long was destroyed before it even really started, so when it was wish time, he asked for a redo of our cruise. We waited until he had been off the chemo for a couple of months, and we had a wonderful time. We even added days on at Disney World from our DVC timeshare after the cruise. Both the Make-A-Wish folks and the Disney Cruise employees told my son to make sure he wore his Make-A-Wish shirt to the parks when we were there. He did one of the days, and even though that wasn't part of his wish, the Disney cast members all treated him well. It was so nice to see him have such a wonderful trip after a ruined dream vacation and a year of non-stop hospital stays. By the way, he's doing great now. He hit 2 years off chemo this past September. Story 18. Not a recipient, but worked at a Hard Rock Cafe. A Wish kid's wish was to see Paul McCartney live, so they came in to eat dinner before his concert down the road from the restaurant. We sat him next to some signed Beatles guitars and sheets of lyrics and such. As an avid Beatles fan myself, I was able to serve them. I sat and talked with that 6-year-old about the Beatles for a good hour. Played all the Beatles songs and had their music videos playing on the TVs throughout the restaurant. It was super humbling how excited this kid was to go see Paul and just be able to be outside the hospital for a night. It was also super heartbreaking seeing his dad's face the whole dinner. I have never seen such pain, and I think about him frequently. Story 19. My daughter is a Wish kid. She wished to go to DC to meet the president, Obama. She did get to go to DC, but didn't get to meet the president, which is just as well since he wasn't in office anymore by the time we went. She still got a great trip though. We met our representative in his office and got out on the floor of the house, which is apparently not very common. Story 20. I had cancer as a kid and got a Make-A-Wish granted. I regret it now. I should have had them promise to publish my novel. But I wanted to meet the fashion designers Dolce & Gabbana. So they flew my mom, dad, and sister to New York City, got us a room at the DoubleTree in Times Square, paid for a manicure and pedicure for me at the department store Henry Bendel, then drove us to Dolce & Gabbana's offices, where I interviewed them about the world of fashion, showed them some of my sketches, received some sketches to take home, and then got to pick out a whole outfit for myself off a rack of clothing. It was cool. What is your best "I definitely did not deserve that grade" story from school? Sophomore year of college, I was taking a class that about 2/3 of the way through the year I totally checked out of. Rarely went to class, hardly ever paid attention when I did, and just stopped caring. Leading up to the final, I of course realized I knew none of the material. The final wasn't cumulative. I did the math and realized I needed 50% to pass the class with a C-. I show up on the day of the exam and realize I got the day wrong. My exam was the previous day. I emailed my professor in a panic and begged her for a chance to retake it or do some kind of extra credit, anything to get me a passing grade. No response. I go home for winter break assuming I'm going to have to retake this class. Haven't told my parents about the shame. Then 2 weeks later, my teacher finally replied. Her email went something like this: I'm so incredibly sorry. I left for vacation immediately after the exam and just now got back. It's obviously way too late for you to take the exam or do any kind of extra credit. The best I can do is to take your current class average, an 89, and put that in for your exam grade. Would that be okay? So I get a B+ instead of the C- I was hoping for? Yes, that would be just fine. I had a college professor whom I just didn't turn in my final, and he gave me an A for the class anyways. Not sure why. I gave him some duck jerky earlier in the year, so maybe he really liked it. Turned in the same essay twice. Got 2 different grades. Did the same with a sculpture. He went on and on about the clear improvements in craftsmanship since last week. Smile and nod. Had an essay that was explicitly due Tuesday in 6th grade. I have no clue why it didn't click that it was due, not due, and only realized when my friend asked me about the essay on the bus. I told my teacher that I'd forgotten to print it out, ran home after the bus, typed it out in 15 to 30 minutes, and got a 97. This started my habit of intense procrastination. In 5th grade, I was really excited to be assigned our first report for homework. Something about having to do research and write up a few pages on a topic made me feel like I was finally entering a big kid's school. Anyways, we had the weekend to do it and my topic was tornadoes. They were randomly assigned, but I was pretty stoked to get a cool one. I spent all weekend doing research and writing up this 4 to 5 page paper on tornadoes with a picture or 2 thrown in. But I was really proud of it. I got a D because my teacher assumed my parents had done it for me and wouldn't discuss the matter. It was not up for debate in any way, and I've never been so crushed. Really killed whatever love I had to learn that year. I still did well in school, but my enthusiasm for learning and doing research on my own never was the same after that. In year 9, US grade 8, History, we were given a small assignment as homework over the weekend. I can't remember what the assignment was on, but it had to be around 500 words and summarize what we'd been doing for the past few weeks. Nothing too hard. I completed the homework to what I considered a reasonable standard and handed it in. However, when I received the grade, I was awarded a D, with the teacher's primary criticism being that I hadn't written enough. I was confused by this since I had written around 500 words, as he asked. He told me to go away and redo it better. After getting home, I had some time to compare my work with my friends. I'd written the essay in size 11 font Times New Roman, and had neglected to include any images. This is pretty standard for higher grade academic work, but most of my peers had used size 14. Some even used Comic Sans. So what did I do? I scaled up the text, increased the spacing, and slapped a couple of generic pictures of Henry VIII's face on there and handed it in the next morning. Lo and behold, after he graded it, I got an A, and a special mention for my hard work. I have never been so thrilled with myself and so disappointed in a teacher in my life. It just goes to show how another person's laziness can screw you over. I had a geometry teacher that everyone hated. Despite the book telling you a way to work out a problem, she'd tell you, but many times it was a different way. If you did it the way that the book says, it'd be marked wrong, no partial credit. If you did it her way and got it wrong, it was wrong, no partial credit. When the entire class misses a question and asks her to go over it, she adds some extra steps that weren't shown, and she couldn't explain when asked about it. Luckily, she didn't check the papers thoroughly, and I've always been a bit messy with my math. I understand the flow and can point it out whenever asked, so I do the work her way while doing it the right way on a paper that she'd never got to see, and just write down the correct answer if her way gave a different one. Of course, this made assignments take nearly twice as long, but don't worry. You know how some teachers will see a lesson with 120 problems and only assign half or so? She didn't do this. Every damn question had to be done, so it usually took around 3 hours a night for this one class. I swear when I passed and moved on to Algebra 2, I didn't know what to do when I finished homework assignments so fast. In high school, we were asked to write a proposal for a new drinking age in the United States. I wrote about how it should be lowered to 12, but people who are past 12 now should have to wait until their next birthday to avoid millions of teenagers suddenly becoming the legal age to drink at once. I cited other countries with lower drinking ages and fewer drinking-related issues, discussed how it currently has a strong forbidden fruit appeal to high school kids, and that wouldn't be as big of a deal. Also, kids could get introduced to alcohol and learn their limits while still being somewhat supervised by their parents. She gave me a 0 and claimed I was making fun of the assignment. Apparently, everyone else only lowered it to 18, citing that if you can go to war, you can drink a drink, or they raised it. I actually really enjoyed the assignment and thought I was being practical. Sounds like a good argument to me. My grandmother is from Belgium, where the drinking age is very young. She always tells stories about how she would drink with her family when she was barely a teenager. She has very good drinking habits because of it. For example, she has never drunk or drove, ever. I'm talking I needed her to pick me up, and when I called, she told me she was halfway through a drink, and I had to call someone else. Took biology and economics during my freshman year of college, and made the mistake of doing both classes in the morning. I worked the swing/graveyard shift. The biology class was graded solely on 3 exams. The dates for them were in the syllabus, along with a summary of the chapters covered in each. I only showed up on the first day and 3 exam days, crammed the night before each time, and really did well on the tests and got an A. Economics was harder. Participation and attendance counted towards the grade, and a test date was moved, so I missed taking it. Fortunately, I had a buddy in the class who signed my name on the attendance sheet that day and was therefore able to convince my professor that he must have lost my exam. He let me retake it and I eked out a B. Left one high school shortly after the semester break, and all teachers gave me an A because they didn't have anything to go on. Went to another state, and they were so far into the semester all teachers decided they could hold me responsible for what they already taught, so they all gave me whatever grade I came in with. The only time in my life I got all A's. I had a bit of a weird teacher in geography way back when I was in the 9th grade. He was always correcting our assignments way too long after we handed them in. One time, we had 2 assignments that should be handed in over the course of 2 weeks. I only did one of them as I didn't really feel like doing the other one for some reason. When we got back the assignments back like a month later or something, he didn't actually give back the assignments. He just told us our grades from a piece of paper that he was reading from. When he got to my desk, he gave me a B for the first one and an A for the one I didn't hand in. I don't think I deserved that. I got the same grade as everyone else on a group project that crashed and burned spectacularly. I was the only person who did any work while the other 8 members of the group messed around. The group agreed with me and signed a letter saying I deserved an A for the work I put in and that they had done nothing. The teacher agreed and gave me a better grade. This is from college, and it happened very recently. I took programming classes, and our mid-exam was to complete pre-written codes. The purpose of the code was to assign characteristics to a rocket. When the required characteristics are filled, the rocket will launch, and the completion status must be 100% for this to happen. If the completion status goes below 90%, the rocket won't launch. You get the idea. I was never good at programming. I understood the logic, but writing the codes down is like writing in an alien language. The exam was 2 hours, and in the span of 2 hours, my completion status was a mere 20%. My friends got 65, 80%, even one was smart enough to change the pre-written codes and got 100%. I accepted the fact that I might fail this class and submitted my exam. I don't exactly know how the gods work up there, but I got a 95 on my mid-exam. Yes, 95. What the hell? I emailed the lecturer asking about how I got such a score, and he said though I didn't get 100%, I implemented polymorphism into the codes, and he thought it was impressive. To this day, I still don't know what the hell polymorphism is, and how in the world I could have implemented that crap on my program. In my first year of university, I wrote a paper in sociology class where I mixed up the word mores, a type of social norm, and more, a type of eel, and as such wrote about the impact of eels on the law. For some reason, the TA thought my eel law paper wasn't too horrible and gave me a B. She told the entire class that someone had written about social eels and that we needed to be more careful with our spelling. This was 10 years ago in the Midwestern US. I took biology as a freshman in high school. There was this big bug collecting project that counted for like 40% of our first semester grade. Basically, we had to catch a bunch of bugs, kill them, pin them, and correctly label them with their scientific name. To get full credit, you had to catch a minimum of 30 unique bug species. The one thing I learned from that project that I still remember, I am terrible at catching bugs. If you count the cricket I bought at a pet store, I managed 18 and received a D+ on the project. So despite earning A's on all the tests and homework that semester, I earned a B in the class. Did not happen to me, but to my grammatically challenged roommate at the time. We were instructed to write a how-to paper for sophomore English class. We had to pick our topics during class and tell the teacher. Someone sitting close to us came up with the topic of how to write a paper, so naturally my friend goes with how to write an F paper. His intentions were to write it as best as he could and receive an A. He wrote it so poorly and with multiple spelling and grammatical errors that the teacher loved the satirical vibe. He demonstrated in his paper and promptly gave him an A. Picked a choice book, had to do a project on it for honors English class, didn't read it, mildly researched the book, shot out a pretty looking PowerPoint, presented fancy bullcrap book report in front of the class and teacher, got an A-. English 101. I forgot that an essay was due that following afternoon but had to work and study for a more important chemistry course. Downloaded the smallest JPEG file I could find, converted it into a PDF and submitted the essay in hopes the professor would ask to send it again and it would give me a buffer time of 24 to 48 hours. Checked the grading module and got full points, no questions asked. Man, I used to do that rename a JPEG to a doc thing to buy time, but it never occurred to me to pick small images. I wonder if my professors ever noticed I was handing in 500 kilobyte Word documents that were supposed to be 3,000 word essays. Geez, I didn't even think about file sizes. I would just open a different doc essay with Notepad, deleted a line, then saved it as a .doc. Then when you opened it again, it'll be corrupted or a jumble of nonsense. I did my senior project on building a computer, like putting together a gaming rig from parts you'd buy on Newegg or Amazon. Since people think that's an impressive thing, I was able to get by with it no problem. Best part is that I had already built it. I just disassembled it, took pictures of myself putting it back together, and talked about how to decide on what parts to get. the core components you need, etc., etc. I once spent a full 2-hour period of a 9th grade class copying the questions slowly onto another sheet of paper. It was a reading retention quiz or something. I guess she was only looking to see if you'd written anything because I got full marks. The moral is, teachers are overworked and underpaid, and children's educations pay the price. Inverse, teacher had this messed up notion of, I think an A- is really good. I got an A-, asked her what I could do to improve it, and what would take it beyond the standard expectation. Nothing. There's nothing else that would make this better. Then where the hell is my 100? In my college dynamics course, we had a group project that we assigned different sections to do within our group. It was an incredibly difficult project, so we couldn't just completely split off and do it on our own. But there were easier sections that could be done by one person. Anyways, in a group of 3, one of our guys just never showed up to any of our meetings. We're not peens, and we get that we're busy and all that, so we just give him the easier stuff to do when he can get around to it. So my friend and I pulled all-nighters until we finally completed it a few days before it was due. We send what we have to the third guy, and he assures us that he'll get the rest done. We check up on him the day before, asking if he wants help, and he says that he's got it and he'll bring the completed project into class. Of course, he walks in and says, "Sorry guys, I never got around to it." We were basically missing the easiest third of our project because he couldn't tell us if he needed help. I explained the situation to the teacher, but he had no sympathy. He said, "In the real world, you live and die with the people by your side," and graded us for what we completed, so surprise, we failed. I didn't talk to that kid for the rest of the semester, even though he sat right next to me. University had an 8 a.m. class. I would probably skip 1/3 of the time, missed the day the midterm was given back. So I asked the professor to bring it to the next class. He starts to give me a hard time before looking at the exam and seeing 100% written at the top and saying good job. I go sit down feeling pretty smart and go to glance through it before the class begins. For the main question, I saw a couple of check marks, then question mark and nothing else for a page and a half before the answer was circled with a check mark. Turns out I had done the problem the wrong way, confused the TA marking the test, and then somehow came to the correct answer at the end, so he just marked it completely correct. In a math test in college, a friend made all the processes wrong. Really wrong. It didn't even make sense. He somehow got the right answer. We don't know how it happened. It wasn't a simple answer either, like 8 or something. It was a semi-complex answer. He didn't get the points, but I remember he went to the teacher to complain, and it was hilarious. I was in an upper-level political science class that had essay tests. The professor asked us questions and wanted us to explain the answers, which was not bad. I filled 5 out of 8 pages in a blue book and turned in my exam. Positive I had aced it. I received a 63%, and when I asked the professor why, he said that although all my answers were correct, other people had filled 8 out of 8 pages, and he had to grade all the tests relative to each other. For my creative writing major piece in high school, I got an A+. I got the highest grade in the whole class and in every creative writing class. I was given awards, I won a prize, and I was praised by every English teacher in the school. I plagiarized it. Every single word. Not a single word was my own doing. I was incredibly depressed at the time and just wanted to get it over with. So I went to a short story website, picked the first one that looked like it was decent, and copied it into a Word document. I know it sounds like I'm making up excuses, but genuinely all I wanted to do was pass the class. I never thought for a frickin' second that I would get awards and prizes for it. I and another guy I didn't know too well got assigned a joint presentation on a topic I can't quite remember. I think it has something to do with tourism in the outdoor industry. We did very little prep work after being assigned the task. Probably 80% of the PowerPoint was made in the hour right before the seminar. We rushed together about 10 slides with info copied from Wikipedia, decided which slides we would each talk through, and left it at that. The presentation went pretty much flawlessly. We somehow managed to confidently blag our way through each slide as if we knew the topic by heart. When one of us would falter, the other would jump in with some more bullcrap to cover. Come to the Q&A at the end, we totally pulled it out of our arse, to the point where the lecturer praised us for being so well prepared. I guess confidence is key. In the end, we got the equivalent of a B+. Definitely did not deserve that grade. When I was in high school, I loved languages but was gripped with such crippling shyness I was unable to speak a foreign language at all. This meant I couldn't do any of the verbal tests because I would put on the headphones and immediately cry. So they wouldn't let me do the French exam course and put me in a lower bracket. A few weeks before exams, the exam board changed the fail criteria to be less stringent. I'd gained some confidence and my teacher said that if I wanted, I could go for it. I took a long time to prepare my verbal presentation and had some help with preparing and practicing it, due to the tight time scale. I still wasn't confident, but the teacher was really supportive. By absolute chance, when I went into the written exam, the essay question was on the exact same topic for which I had prepared my verbal presentation. I literally sat there and wrote it out all as an essay. You guys, I got an A. Nobody expected it, it was fantastic. In my senior year of high school, I was taking Spanish 12, or the senior level course. I had been taking yearly Spanish courses since 7th grade at this point, so you would think I would be bueno by now. But no, I was not bueno. For our final presentation, we had to discuss any topic we wanted for a full 15 minutes, obviously in Spanish. I knew I would struggle, but I tried all year to actually improve. I did not. Anyway, I did my presentation on the Oregon Trail computer game. Remember that crap? It was awesome. I played through and grabbed screenshots of different stages. I named my players after my friends in the class. I went the full nueve, you could say. One flaw. I didn't have the vocabulary for a 15-minute speech on my game, so I tried to cheat. Each slide was well done, but what I said was the exact same with small changes. Mi familia es, then a verb. I even wrote note cards and hid them in my crotch while I sat and pretended they were hidden. I'd read them off them because remembering like 8 verbs was beyond me. Mucho trabajo. I ended up with a grade that would allow me to pass and leave language courses for the rest of the year. My teacher knew I was an idiot and gave me a slide. I'm convinced. So I thought I could do the same next semester, and I signed up for Spanish 13. Easy college credit, I thought. I walked in, the same teacher. She took one look at me and wrote me a pass to my counselor. You aren't taking this. Go find a business course or something. So I did. Now I have a marketing degree I don't use. Life is crazy, man. During my film class, I had to make a documentary about whatever I wanted. My grandpa had gotten dementia, and I wanted to talk about his life and stuff so I could have something after he was gone. He was a quiet man, so I didn't really know much about him. He died while in production, and the final product literally made my mom cry when I showed it to the class, and a lot of people teared up too. What do I get? An 83. A person literally died during the making of my documentary, and I get a B-. The qualifications to access university in Scotland are what are known as Highers. I took Higher English, but I'm kinda crap at English, but good enough to pass the exam. When our prelim, a sort of test exam, rolled around in February, I failed it by like 2%, and the teacher decided that I wasn't good enough to sit in the higher exam. She'd keep me in the class, but when the exams rolled around, I'd sit in the lower tier Intermediate 2 exam, which would give me a lower tier qualification, which is useless for just about anything. I sat this exam and ended up getting an A. A useless freaking A would be no help in getting me into university, effectively wasting my whole year in that class. This was 13 years ago now, and I'm still annoyed. I got a B on a paper I previously got a D on because my teacher didn't write the grade in her grade book, asked me what I got, and believed me. She handed back the papers, and I typically got good grades and didn't have the paper on me, so she just took my word for it. Took an ethnic studies class in college. I scored an 88, 50, and 30 on 3 tests. I did like 70% of my homework, but got an A on the final project. The final project was that we had to write about a group in America that has been discriminated against and how. The length didn't matter, so I wrote a 2-page paper on slavery. Got an A for the final class. I was in a statistics course my senior year of high school that I took as a blow-off so I wouldn't have to take calc. The middle-aged female professor was obsessed with my friend and I, and would let us get away with almost anything. We always joked that she wanted to do the nasty with us, but I genuinely think she might have if we had propositioned her. Anyway, in the 3rd trimester of the year, I blew off almost every assignment. I barely did anything. I just messed around in her class and just wrote notes on my calculator back and forth with the cute girl who sat in front of me. A couple of times, the professor let me teach the class. It was a huge joke. I never actually checked, but I was almost certainly failing the course. Her class was the last period of the day, so I always hung around and chatted with her after school before tennis practice, totally and intentionally just endearing myself to her as much as possible. Toward the end of the year, during one of these chats, she straight up asked me what kind of grade I would be happy with in the class. I wasn't a greedy guy, and I figured I was probably actually sitting around 35 to 40% in the class solely from doing well on the tests, so I said I would probably be cool with a C+ or something. Trimester final grades came out, and god damn it, I had a 76% in statistics, which in our system was the exact cutoff for a C+. For my senior year of college, I took an intro psych class just to offset the upper-level courses I was in. I was the only senior in a room of freshmen. I thought it was going to suck, but it was one of my best courses. The guy teaching was hilarious, attractive, and had an interesting lesson plan. Plus, he was a pretty chill guy. He told us at the beginning of the semester that if his test schedule didn't work for us for whatever reason, he would let us come take our test in his office at a better time. Of course, it was my senior year, so I didn't want to miss out on any parties, at least not to study for an intro psych class. He let me reschedule 2 tests, keeping an A for the class. I was completely honest with him, and he gave 0 craps, and even told me I better not miss anything fun to study for his class. I mean, I would have gone out the night before the tests anyway. It's not like I was going to fail the class, but I did not deserve that A. Hands down the best teacher I've ever had. I had to write an essay about civil disobedience. I got an A for turning in a paper saying no. I did not study for my microeconomics final one bit, as I needed a perfect score to get an A, and I could get a 0 and maintain a B. My professor did the final on the computers in class, and the whole class got 2 tries. Upon completion of my first try, all the answers were displayed. I used my notebook to write down all the answers, and guess who pulled off an A in microeconomics? The whole class somehow managed to have a 95% average on the final, a school record. I was a junior in college, and I had to take a class outside my major, so I chose a freshman anthropology class. It was the worst. The freshmen trying on their pseudo-intellectual hats, the overly self-righteous comments during discussions made me attend probably less than half the classes. I turned in half-assed assignments and barely read the textbook. At the end of the course, I sent my professor an email apologizing and telling him I would retake the class next term for a better grade, assuming I would get a D or lower. He never answered, but I got a C+, which meant I didn't need to retake it. I got an A in an introductory Russian class and completely failed to learn Russian. I learned how to read and write the letters. I memorized most of the conjugation and declension charts, and I got an A on every written test by extrapolating from the vocabulary and grammar in the test questions and examples. But I never actually learned how to read Russian fluently. I have to sound words out like a preschooler. I only retained about 80% of the Cyrillic letters, and I don't remember Cyrillic alphabetical order, so it's hard to look things up. And I can't produce a single sentence verbally or in writing unless I have grammar and vocabulary in front of me to extrapolate from. What are some biological life hacks that actually work? If you have a blocked nose right now, try this. Exhale completely out of your mouth until your lungs are empty. Do not breathe back in yet. Pinch your nose with your thumb and forefinger. Don't breathe yet. Tilt your head all the way back and then all the way forward. Do not breathe in yet. Repeat the head tilting exercise for as long as you can hold your breath. When you can't hold it anymore, let go of your nose and breathe in a nice lungful. Your nose will be clear, at least for a long enough time to use some nasal spray and clear it properly. If you need to draw a straight line without a ruler, draw 2 dots and put your pencil on one of them. Stare at the other dot and draw your line without looking anywhere else. Our brains will automatically make our hands go to where we are looking, creating a straight line. Just tried it. What the hell? It's like I'm not even controlling my own hand. Weird, huh? It's a trick my dad taught me when I was a kid. He was a draftsman before computers and everything was drawn on paper. If you take a warm shower before you get in bed, your core temperature will drop as you lie in bed because it rose in the shower, which your body reads as a stage of falling asleep, leading you to fall asleep much faster. I'm an insomniac and most prescription sleep meds don't work for me, but this plus better sleep hygiene has helped me a ton. What is sleep hygiene? Keep your bed clean and comfortable. Don't do anything other than sleep in it. Keep water by the bed and don't eat right before you want to sleep. Try to go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. If you get a stitch in your chest, usually from running or just random, that bothers you when you breathe in past a certain point, you have to brace yourself and breathe in all the way quickly. The trick is to do it like the lung equivalent of pulling off a band-aid. As someone who gets these all the time, 80% of the time it'll be gone immediately. It's called a precordial catch. I find it too painful to breathe in all the way, so instead I hold my breath right at the point where it starts to hurt. It goes away after holding my breath for just a few seconds. I guess that's the equivalent of peeling the plaster off carefully. I get them a lot, and they usually last for a long time, up to even 30 minutes. You know what helps? Burping. Gather as much air in your throat as you can before it starts to sting and burp. It goes away almost immediately after. Try it next time. Now they never bother me anymore. Such an easy fix. I might be late to the party, but if you mildly hurt yourself like a stubbed toe or a paper cut, pinch yourself somewhere else and focus on that feeling. Your body assumes it's more painful and stops feeling the pain from the other spot as much. It helps lessen the length of time that you have to deal with the pain of the injury. I don't think this will work for gunshot wounds or decapitations, but I haven't had the chance to test it yet. Rolling around and stretching on the floor for 5 to 10 minutes helps to relieve a huge amount of body aches and soreness for me. It's something I'm doing fairly regularly now because it works miracles when I'm physically spent at the end of a long day. Highly recommended. If someone else has hiccups, ask them when the last time they saw a white horse was. They'll think about it for a split second and give you some sort of answer, then their hiccups are gone. Sometimes I do this to random people and do not even tell them why I asked. They usually walk away thinking I'm some sort of weirdo, but hey, their hiccups are gone. Every time I pee, I scratch this one spot on my back. Now, when it is important that I pee before a long car ride or know I'm going to a place without a restroom, I go to the bathroom and scratch that spot on my back and I start to pee whether or not I had to. If you get a lot of mild headaches that feel like they might be caffeine headaches or maybe tension headaches, try drinking more water. They could be caused by dehydration. Walking each day for a certain amount of time increases your mental capacities. If you get up to go to the toilet at night, close one eye and keep it closed while the lights are on. When you turn the light back off, the closed eye will be adjusted to the dark. My father had a knee replacement a few years ago and tried to tough out the post-op period at home without any opiates. This led to one incident of pretty severe pain which made him finally pop some Percocets, but before the drugs kicked in, he was still thrashing around in agony. To take his mind off of it, I started asking him about his college apartment in all kinds of elaborate detail, like what kind of carpet was on the floor, what color shower curtain did they have, what sort of dishes, and on what shelves that they were kept, etc., etc. It forced him to focus his attention on his memories of this place, and not on the pain he was currently experiencing. It was successful, at least long enough for the drugs to start doing real work on the problem. My friend uses this tactic to help people if they're having a panic attack, or have gone similarly funny from ingesting too many recreational substances, asks them to describe something in detail, keeps them focused on something else, and distracts them from being worked up. It's a great idea. If you have a bit of acid reflux, sleep on your left side. However, if you experience it frequently, talk to your doctor. Or sleep on 2 pillows. Helps keep the acid down where it's supposed to be if your neck is elevated. It also helps immensely if the acid reflux makes your voice croaky in the mornings, but echoing the statement above, if it bothers you, see a doctor. It really helped me. Source: I have acid reflux. Furthermore, avoid eating or drinking things that provoke acid reflux. Caffeine, smoking, and alcohol are supposedly the worst. Sad face. But I find garlic, onion, and anything spicy really causes a lot of pain. Basically anything that gives taste to food. Another sad face. If you want to make yourself sneeze, try staying in a dark place for a while and then going out into the sun. For 18 to 35% of people, that'll induce a sneeze due to the photic sneeze effect, or autosomal dominant compelling helioophthalmic outburst syndrome, or ACHOO, because scientists especially love a good acronym. Thank you! I'm one of the 18 to 35% of people, but nobody else at work is apparently, because everyone acted like I was insane when I told them to look at the sun if they need to sneeze. Glad to hear this is a real thing. The pinhole effect. If you're short or long-sighted, then take off your glasses and make a tiny, tiny hole with your hand. Look through it and read something you normally couldn't. For photographers, doing this serves to reduce the aperture, thereby increasing your depth of field and putting more things in focus. If you're worried you're going to throw up, your mouth usually fills with saliva a minute or two beforehand because the contents of your own stomach are harmful to your throat. It's a pretty good indication that you're going to hurl. Drink water before bed if you want to wake up early. That Christmas episode of The Simpsons changed my life. Sometimes in the morning before my shower, I'll sit on the toilet to pee rather than stand. When I'm done peeing, I'll continue to just sit there and read the news or whatever on my phone. 7 times out of 10, I'll end up pooping if I sit there long enough. This prevents that horrible situation where you shower, and as soon as you get out, you have to poop. I'm not a morning person, so perhaps if I got up a little earlier and had a cup of coffee, things would progress naturally, but this works for me. Life pro tip: sit to pee. Cleaner toilet, comfier, plus you maybe get the chance to poop. Yo, seriously, start getting exercise. That crap works. Go hard. Go beyond what you expect you can do. You'll feel great. I feel like I must be exercising wrong. I've never experienced anything like an exercise high. I just feel tired, bored, and sweaty no matter what I do. I keep doing it because I know it's healthy, but it never stops feeling like an unpleasant chore. Meanwhile, my coworkers talk about running like it's cocaine, and I don't understand at all. Get adequate sleep. Do you have any life hacks on how to do that if you're a chronic insomniac? My friend used to be a semi-insomniac, never properly diagnosed but often had completely sleepless nights. And after developing a proper workout routine, it helped immensely. Working out for 20 to 30 minutes each day will help you. But even if it doesn't cure your insomnia, it has immense benefits in other areas. Everyone owes it to themselves to work out regularly. If you get brain freeze, either breathe with your mouth open for a few seconds and power through, or try to use your tongue to warm the roof of your mouth. You can do those spot the differences pictures instantly with a little practice. It's the same technique you use for free viewing stereophoto pairs. Cross your eyes until the two pictures merge. Then, this is the hard part, and it takes some practice, bring the merged image into focus. The differences between the two will stand out as depth anomalies in an otherwise flat image. This works because your brain is set up to compare the images from each eye to determine the depth of every point based on the parallax shift. The parts of the two flat images will still be a flat image at a different depth when you cross your eyes, but your brain doesn't know what to do with the parts that don't match up, and they look weird in a way that's hard to describe. I've compared whole documents a page at a time this way. You can spot a single letter difference in a whole page in a language you don't even read. Hate running? Try changing your stride to lots of smaller, shorter steps. Went from 3 miles being a monumental hurdle to twice a week 8-mile runs feeling great. It's a lot easier on your knees and feet too. Also, audiobooks help with boredom. Run outside, not on a treadmill. I hate to use the phrase, but it was a game changer for me. Also, I learned to try slowing down and get my technique right and repeatable. Then after I was able to gain mileage, I was able to make my per mile time faster. Another surprising thing, getting the right shoes and properly fitting running gear where I feel like I look good makes me feel good. I don't know, sounds shallow, but now I look forward to my runs and I can say this is a part of the ritual. Not sure if this fits here, but vinegar is super useful. I use it in a lot of ways. I'm a very greasy and sweaty person, and sometimes my body odor builds up to the point where I can still smell it fresh out of the shower. I also tend to get jock itch and athlete's foot pretty often, and have tried tons of things to fix these problems, including prescriptions, but ultimately found vinegar to be the best. Just spray some on the problem area, wait a few minutes and hop in the shower. The vinegar kills the bacteria which causes the issue. It kills odor so well, you'll probably be able to get away with not using deodorant for a few days after. It's also a great antihistamine that instantly soothes itching, which also makes it great for sunburns and insect stings, particularly apple cider vinegar. Not only does it make the sunburn stop itching, but it stops the pain as well and seems to temper the sunburn into a tan. Minimizes peeling as well. I really can't emphasize enough how well it works on sunburns. More soothing and helpful than aloe for sure. It stinks, but only for about 5 minutes, and you'll eventually get over the shock of the smell. Cramped your foot? Grab your big toe and pull it forward and wiggle it about as fast as possible. The cramp goes away. Not sure if it's just a placebo type effect, but it works every time for me. This is called autogenic inhibition. You're stretching the muscles, which causes an automatic reflex in the muscle, using Golgi tendon organs which sense muscle tension to release the cramp. This is also why standing on your leg when you have a Charlie horse is the fastest relief. For hiccups, take a deep breath, swallow twice, then exhale slowly out of your nose. I have no clue why it works. I just had hiccups yesterday and Googled how to get rid of them and this worked. I'll definitely be using it next time. I tell myself to hiccup again and get all stressed with myself. Go on, hiccup again. And the pressure of trying to force an involuntary action seems to prevent further hiccups. For tinnitus, place the palms of your hands over your ears with fingers resting gently on the back of your head. Your middle fingers should point towards one another just above the base of your skull. Place your index fingers on top of your middle fingers and snap them, the index fingers onto the skull, making a loud drumming noise. Repeat 40 to 50 times. Some people experience immediate relief with this method. Repeat several times a day for as long as necessary to reduce tinnitus. Dr. Jan Stridham of A to Z of Health, beautyandfitness.org. Raising your feet and leaning forward when pooping. Imagine a downhill skier's body position. No straining due to mimicking the action of squat toilets, or just use a squat toilet. You can help loosen a plugged sinus by alternating pushing on the roof of your mouth with your tongue or thumb, then using your other hand to push just above the bridge of the nose. Also, a finger up the rectum is the best hiccup cure. I'm serious. Mindfulness meditations can actually cause your brain to change physically to make you less anxious. Started going to yoga and it really helped for me. The best one was telling us to think about our intention. Mine was peace because I overthink. You think about the word peace while you inhale for 5 seconds, then you imagine the words everything else. Leave your body as you exhale. I do this 10 times a day and I don't feel as anxious anymore. I was having an anxiety attack coming on before I read this. I tried it and it helped, so thank you. Not sure if this counts, but putting food on a smaller plate tricks your body into feeling like it ate more. It tricks your brain, not your body. I like to think of it like this. Humans now have constant sources of food and water, but this is only a recent occurrence. We are animals, and animals don't always know when the next meal is coming. So if there is food in front of you, eat it all and eat it as quickly as you can. You know that minute or so delay between when you stop eating and when you are actually physically feeling full? I like to think that's my brain going, shut up stomach, I'll say when we stop eating and we stop eating when all the food is gone. Weight loss is 75 to 100% diet. Going to the gym and running a mile does not burn as many calories as you think. A professor did a study where he only ate Twinkies for a month because the caloric intake was low. He lost weight, or maintained it. This truly showed it was the volume and less about the contents of what we eat, which controls our weight. Obviously, you get no essential vitamins and nutrients from just Twinkies. I don't advocate it, but all these diet fads are useless. The key concept is controlling caloric intake. That's all it takes. I looked up how many minutes it took on the treadmill to burn off the calories of adding cream to my morning coffee. Then I stopped adding cream to my morning coffee. Black coffee is the best anyway. Plant microclover in your lawn for free fertilizer and food for bees. If you're laying in bed and half your nose is blocked, roll to the side where the clear nostril is against your pillow, and you'll find that within about a minute your blocked nostril will open and you can breathe easily. Vitamin D. Started taking it along with multivitamins, and I not only get sick less, but I'm so much happier. I used to struggle with frequent depression, and now it's rare. Vitamin D won't work for everyone, but holy crap, give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. Just don't take more than 10,000 IU a day for more than 3 months because you'll get toxicity. I take 4,000 IU a day. Talk to your doctor about dose. I'd imagine taking 22 pounds a day of anything wouldn't be good for you. Yeah, it's actually 10,000 IU or international units, not grams, or around 0.25 milligrams. For males, sorry gals, to get rid of that underwear dribble that happens after you go pee at a urinal, use your finger, press it against your scrotum near your taint, and while keeping it pressed, slide it in the direction away from your taint. You'll know you've done it correctly when you get one last squirt of urine and no more dribbles. While eating high fat and high protein and low carb, like fewer than 20 grams per day, will make you lose body fat, even if the comparable number of calories consumed is higher. Do you have an example of what would work? Like what kind of meal? Steak and eggs, both fried in butter with wilted spinach or broccoli. Coffee with double cream or blended coffee with unsalted butter and coconut oil. Omelets made from full-fat milk, filled with cheese, chorizo, and chili. If you Google LCHF diet, then it gives you loads of tips. I recently started sitting to pee. To be honest, it's a much better way to go to the bathroom. You can sit, sometimes you poop, and you don't have to get into that awkward urinal situation. Do you want immunity from infections without actually being sick? Try subcutaneous injections of weakened and inactivated viruses and bacteria. The bacteria and virus will not produce symptoms, but your body will still make antibodies, often providing lifelong immunity. Just ask your doctor about the greatest biological hack ever invented: vaccination. If you are shy like me and get a little nervous before walking into a party or something, then try, while alone, making yourself as big as possible by raising your arms over your head in exaggerated posture. This won't give you a night of confidence, but it works for a little temporary boost. Awkward boner? Need to get rid of it fast? If you're sitting down, just push your feet as hard as you can into the ground for 10 to 15 seconds. This will flex your leg muscles, and more blood will go to them than the boner. Where was this when I needed it? 1. Drink a big glass of water first thing when you wake up to help hydrate, kickstart your metabolism, and wake you up more quickly. 2. Eating a high-fiber diet with lots of raw vegetables helps lower blood pressure and makes you feel better in general. It also helps keep you from binge-eating cookies or whatever while simultaneously improving your entire digestive process. 3. When trying to see something at night, don't look directly at it. Look slightly to the side and it will appear more clearly. 4. Getting enough sleep really does dramatically improve your waking existence. The same goes for staying hydrated. 5. Just 30 minutes of any kind of activity, even walking each day, is proven to return tremendous health benefits in many ways, including all the benefits listed above. If the average person drank 3 to 4 more glasses of water per day, ate a couple servings of raw veggies, went for a walk each night after dinner, and posted up 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep each night, our society would literally be much healthier. These things are all easy to do, but doing nothing is, sadly, even easier. My friend who quit smoking recently told me this. He used to smoke majorly to relieve work stress, not that he was too fond of smoking. His yoga teacher told him the reason he felt relieved when he smoked was because the long puffs of smoke he inhaled and exhaled were nothing but deep breaths. He advised him to sit and practice deep breathing whenever he feels like smoking. It's been 2 months since he quit, and he says all we need is to breathe deeply in this fast-paced life. Use your fingertips to raise your brow, and rest it lightly on your fingers this way for a minute or so. Relieve sinus pressure and stress headaches. I've worked in mental health, and we had our clients do this to cool off since feeling crappy after yelling often made them act crappy. Eventually, they understood as much themselves and took steps to try and cool off on their own, in this way and other ways. If you force yourself to smile, your brain will just assume you're happy and trick you into feeling better, or something. Might work if you're just having a crap day or something, but it doesn't work for clinical depression. I don't know if this will work for everyone, but when I was a kid, my parents took me to the doctor and got me vaccinated. And simple as that, I don't have polio or hepatitis C or HPV. Amazing, right? Not a human body related one and pretty late to the party, but you can grow a stick into a bush or tree. For example, you come across a raspberry bush and you wish you had a raspberry bush. Here's what you do. Ideally, you wait until the plant is dormant, maybe between November and March in the northern hemisphere, depending on where you live. Basically, when the plant has no leaves, cut off a stick a foot long or a little more, over 30 centimeters. It should have several little fat spots on it called nodes or buds. Keep the stick wet. Once you get it home, gently peel back an inch or so of the bark at the bottom. Some people add a substance called rooting hormone at this point, available at any garden store. Stick it in the dirt so that 1 or 2 buds are out of the dirt, maybe covering a half or 2/3 of the stick. Water the dirt. The pro tip at this point is to keep the bottom of the dirt warm but the top of the plant cool. It's not always required but helps a lot. People use heat mats for this. This is no slam dunk, but half the time or better you'll get a new plant. Cloning is not just for laboratories. Forgot to mention that it is absolutely critical to plant the cutting right side up for many plants, if not most. People keep track of which side goes up or down by cutting one at an angle. Also, all this is really pretty general. If you know the name of the plant you want to propagate and want to do your homework, Google propagate your plant from cuttings and see if there are variations from this technique for that plant. Shorter or longer cuttings, the number of nodes, rooting hormone, etc. It won't work for everyone, but for me, I have a milk allergy. Every time I drink more than a half a liter of milk, my nose clogs up and I can't smell. Before my anatomy classes, where we work on cadavers and smell a lot of formaldehyde, I drink lots of milk, so I don't have to smell that god-awful formaldehyde. I started drinking almost 3 liters of water a day, and I feel amazing, and I've lost 10 pounds in a good way. 1. Save PDF files of research papers in first author _title _of _paper format. 2. Create 5 yearly folders in your references directory, like 1980 to 1984, 1985 to 1989. Saving papers in this fashion will give you a nice idea about what's happening in a particular field over time. Also, you are forced to pay attention to the publication date of a paper before saving it. Working out before eating breakfast accelerates your weight loss routine. Has been used by cyclists for ages. but you should build up slowly to allow your body to get used to empty stomach training. First 10 minutes, then 15, etc. To speed up things even more, work out before going to sleep. Don't eat, and again in the morning, but don't force it. If you're out drinking, have a glass of water in between every alcoholic drink. A big percentage of hangovers is just dehydration. I do this every time I drink and I've never had a hangover. If you often find yourself lying awake, wondering if you really need to go to the bathroom or if you can go back to sleep and ignore it, the thing to do is tell yourself now that when you recognize that situation, you must immediately get up and go, because let's face it, you will eventually have to anyway. Your half-asleep brain is very bad at making decisions. Make the decision now, and your half-asleep brain will know it was a good decision made while you were in a better state, and you can trust yourself to just do it. Then go back to sleep. 1. Sleepy? Fight drowsiness by chewing on food. For some people, their body is programmed to stay alert while eating. I've never been sleepy while eating. A bag of chips or candy, chewable, not hard candy, can give you a quick sugar rush. 2. Eye fatigue from too much computer or TV? Take 30 seconds to focus and stare at a faraway object, cup on the coffee table, the tree outside of the window, etc. Your eyes will recalibrate back to normal. 3. Got an itch inside your ear? Try scratching the inside of your mouth near the tonsils. For some reason it works. 4. Water stuck in ear? Turn your head to the side, water ear down, and slam your head downwards onto a soft surface, pillow, bed, sofa, etc. Literally forced water out. 5. Clogged sinuses? Heat up the snot to make it run out. Either breathe in steam, head above boiling water trick, or 30 seconds to a minute of intense jumping jacks or shadow boxing should do it. 6. Trying to avoid a sneeze? Breathe out sharply through your nose. Works 50% of the time for me. Conversely, if you feel a sneeze coming on, you can encourage a sneeze by taking tiny breaths in and out through your nose. This mimics vibrations of your nose hair, which can trigger a sneeze. Works 30% of the time for me. 7. Want to hold your breath longer? Relax and lower heartbeat. Take a few calm, deep breaths. Restores deep oxygen reserves in tissues. When ready, take a breath up to 85% of your lung capacity, not 100% because that will make you want to breathe out faster. When you start to run out of oxygen, slowly breathe out to give yourself a few more seconds. Go even longer by not making frantic movements or exerting too much energy while holding your breath. 8. This last one is weird and takes practice. Want to create a weird, robotic-sounding whistle? Start by whistling. Try to maintain the whistle noise while simultaneously humming with your throat. The two sound waves will create a weird noise. I think it's called constructive interference or something like that. That's all, folks. Greasy hair? No shampoo? Comb your hair before you shower. In the shower, wash your hair with hot water. Then, at the end of the shower, wash your hair with cold water. Ta-da! Hair is much more moist and healthy. Professor here. Rewrite your notes in your own words. The single best hack for quick learning possible. What cringy thing did you do in the past that still keeps you up at night? My crush came to my house to do a high school project. It involved the internet, and while she sat next to me, she tried to navigate to Google on my computer. Unfortunately, the address bar autofilled and took her to my last Google search. Page 2 of the results for her name. Every link had been clicked. We both just sat in silence. During my alcohol phase, I went on Facebook to search for and pore over pictures of my crush. When I woke up in the morning, I realized that I had actually created an event with her name as the title. For those asking, I believe the event was set as public. The name I put was a short version of her first name, but everyone knew. We'd never spoken since, and the last time I saw her on the street, I hid. Last year, on New Year's Eve, I was at a big bar in New York with friends, and I got kinda wasted and went outside for a cigarette at one point. I must have actually been outside for the countdown because when I came back in, I looked at my phone and it was like 12:02, and I asked my friend why there wasn't a countdown done by the DJ. I couldn't really hear what he said, so I went up to the DJ and asked to use the mic, and I did a second countdown in front of the entire bar, with hundreds of people, starting at 30, and no one joined in. I love these starting at 30. Awkward enough as is. My coworker and I were taking the stairs to get to my office to be healthy. He mentioned my skirt was crooked, so I readjusted it as we stepped out, and a bunch of the bosses were there, staring at two people coming out of the emergency staircase all flushed and sweaty, and one of them was readjusting her skirt. The raised eyebrows were bad enough. The smirk from this really pervy boss was the worst. I was really sick one day in high school and my mother thought I was faking it and still made me go. I sneezed so hard I crapped myself. It was everywhere. I called her to ask if she could pick me up from school or at least bring me a change of clothes, but she still thought I was lying. Luckily, my gym teacher found me a pair of pants, but I had to deal with my shame for the rest of the school year. I got made fun of a lot for that. I ran just like Naruto throughout high school, from switching class to class, during lunchtime, catching the bus, etc. I always thought I was cool. When I was in middle school, these older kids were making fun of me, so I turned and yelled at them, "I can't hear you, I have a potato in my ear," like I was the smartest freaking person on earth. They proceeded to continue making fun of me and my potato ear. I had a female family friend. We ended up going to the same school in the end, and she was having a party that evening. We were across the room from each other in the canteen, in 2 separate lunch queues. There was a lot of shouting across from people trying to talk to their friends, and I caught her calling to me and trying to say something. I keep shouting back, "What?" Because it's so noisy. Me, "I can't hear you, but we can chat at the party, yeah?" The room suddenly goes quiet. Her, "You're not invited, and I'm not even trying to talk to you." Turns out she was trying to talk to her friend behind me. Don't know why this makes me cringe every time I think back to it, but it's probably to do with how cool I felt at 11 being friends with one of the cool girls by default, who, it turns out, never really liked me anyway. When I got my period for the first time, I took it upon myself to warn all of my friends, some of whom I wasn't even very close with, via email that I might be moody because, you know, womanhood and all. Ugh. After a girl forgave me for I don't even remember what, I said, "Where's my hug?" Oh god, the flashbacks. In 6th grade, I started playing Guitar Hero 3. That was my intro into any music differing from hip-hop, so I basically threw the entire track list onto my iPod and would walk around campus air guitaring. Or more like air guitar heroing, I guess? Anyway, one day in class, my teacher asked the class if any of us played an instrument, and the conversation went like this. "Noob 21, don't you play guitar?" "No, I actually play Guitar Hero, basically the same thing." I do actually play guitar now, and this thought makes me cringe so much. I openly considered myself as a juggalo and had the Coolio hairstyle to match. I'm a very pale ginger. Cold sweats and stifled vomit come with these memories. In middle school, we had this mean cooking teacher that everyone hated until our last year of being there. She seemed to lighten up a lot. On our last day of school, everyone was hugging her and saying goodbye in the front part of the school, and I decided why the hell not, she's pretty cool. So as she was walking up the walkway towards me, I put out my arms to hug her, and she just walked right past me and I hear laughter from behind me, and it's my crush and her friends dying of laughter. Still kills me to this day. I went to a Blue Jays game. I'm from the States. When I was like 7, I thought the US hated Canada and started loudly booing the national anthem. My mom was not happy. I guess it's not as cringy now, considering I was a kid when it first happened, but back in 1st grade, we were writing a test or something and I had to go to the washroom badly, but the teacher refused to let me go until the tests were finished, so I peed all over my chair. There was a huge puddle all over the floor. The girl next to me asked me what was all over my seat, and I said it must have been water. She dipped her fingers in it and licked it and said, "Yep, it's just water." No one ended up finding out I had pissed myself, so that's always good. Every single thing I posted on Facebook before 2013. Ugh. When I was in my first year of high school, I was in a show where we were divided into groups. In my group, there was a girl who had recently become a mother. I remember that right before one of the shows, she was standing with her friends and being very negative about the show and said she wished she didn't have to do it. For some inane, insane, idiotic reason, I thought it would be hilarious to say, "Do the show or I'll kill your baby." She never spoke to me again, and I will never forget the way she and her friends looked at me. I cringe so hard every time I think about this. I was invited to the birthday party of someone I'd only met a couple of times, but we had a lot of mutual friends. I was sitting in the lounge having a drink, and the birthday guy came in and leaned over me with his arms outstretched. So I hugged him. He was reaching for something behind me. There was a brief time in middle school in which I would speak in the manner of Tony Scarface Montana. "Shut up, you pile of cockroaches." So embarrassing. I used to wear a fedora, unironically. Farted in karate class. I was like 8, but never went back after that. Sent like 5 love confessions to a girl in high school over MySpace, then chickened out and deleted them. Turns out deleting stuff from the sent box doesn't unsend the message. I once wrote a letter in 2nd grade to my best friend's older sister that was in 4th grade. It was gushy and gooey and romantic. He passed it on, and I sort of forgot about it until one day several weeks later when I asked him, "Oh, by the way, what did she say?" And he responded, "She kind of just laughed." I still cringe when she brings it up, and now we're in our 20s. When I was 17, I was texting my boyfriend and remember saying, "I can't wait for you to come over this weekend so we can have sex and eat crabs." I sent it to my stepdad. My friends and I used to watch a British comedy called The League of Gentlemen. There was a scene where a character said, "You, monkey man." For some stupid reason, we coined the phrase and used it to wind each other up. One night, we were in the pub watching the Football World Cup, and Ronaldinho came onto the screen, and I shouted, "You, monkey man," in a packed pub. Obviously, there were people of different races there. It was absolutely horrifying. It just came out without thinking. I'm not in the slightest bit racist. My mates still remind me of it 15 years on, and the cringe is still raw. My fanfiction.net account, when Warriors, the cats, and PJO were still popular among teens. I used to frequent a role-playing forum. My characters were the cringe crap, and looking back, I question why I roleplayed talking cats and demigods. Due to me having over 10k posts on those places, I can't exactly go back to delete them. And mods deleting them would lower the total post count number, which I think might have reached 600 to 700k in the time that I've been gone. I still talk to friends from the forum though. Waited in line at a gas station bathroom. I went in and took a gigantic crap and clogged the toilet. I tried to plunge it, but nothing worked, so I walked out with about 3 guys staring at me waiting to go in. I quickly drove off only to find out I had left my phone in the bathroom. Had to turn around and ask for my phone while everyone just stared at me. Me and 2 friends of mine were speaking in a Facebook group chat about going to the gym later. One of my friends, who was new in town, became friends due to a relationship he'd formed whilst living in a different country and was only coming on a free trial to see if he'd join. He was giving it the big one about how he smashed the gym back in hometown, etc. In the middle of arranging times and crap, he sent a message to the chat. What gym machines are there? Then he sent, how to use the machines convincingly. We questioned, he said he lied and had never been to a gym and thought he was typing on Google. 5th grade Valentine's Day, I gave 2 girls a choice of necklaces at the same time. Like, I get that I was trying to be a player back then, but damn, that was cringy. I once referred to a friend as having an electric personality at his funeral, 5 days after he had been electrocuted. The words kinda just hung in the air at the funeral home, swirling around the group of 8 or 9 of us that were reminiscing. One of the guys looked at me and winced. A girl rolled her eyes and turned her back toward me. I swear it was innocent, but I never have before or since so badly wanted to be swallowed up by the floor. In 3rd grade, my mother gave me 30 Valentine's Day cards to write my classmates' names and attach a small candy. I instead wrote the name of my 3rd grade crush in another class on all of the cards. All of them. I proceeded to leave them by his classroom door while he was at recess. Sure enough, that boy never talked to me again. In middle school, I dated a guy I didn't really like for less than 24 hours. We went on a walk, and while he was standing next to me, I texted on my phone that I didn't want to date him anymore and that we should just be friends. I handed my phone to him to show the message, and he cried. I went to a surprise birthday party for a friend of mine that I had a crush on in middle school, and my mom dropped me off at her driveway, which was quite long. I walked into the house and everyone yelled surprise. They thought I was her. I was so embarrassed. I was a loner guy just trying to fit in, so everyone is upset at me and making fun of me, and in walks the birthday girl. So I messed up her surprise. Later on, there is some music playing and people are dancing together. I finally get to dance with her, and literally mid-dance she runs off to talk to her friend and left me. That whole night sends cringes up my spine. The funny comments I wrote in the YouTube comment section. I'm female. I remember meeting a previous boyfriend's father. I didn't know what to do, so I went to shake his hand and he just stared at it and then clasped it and squeezed it, not knowing what to do. Everyone was looking and watching, wondering why on earth I went to shake his hand. Thankfully, it's the one and only time I met him. So my grandpa was in the hospital very sick with lung cancer, and the whole family was gathered in the waiting room. Both sides of the family, enter me, the kid. I was mercilessly jumping on my older sister because she said something mean to me, and then I stopped, turned to her and said, "Are you dead yet?" I got stares from every person in the room, even a few non-family members. I still cringe thinking back to it. I remember my crush was texting me and she said she liked me a lot. I was so excited that I screenshot the text and wanted to send it to my best friend. I was playing a video game at the same time and I accidentally sent it to my crush and not my friend. I used to run up the stairwell to look down at cleavage for the spank bank inventory. I went over to a chick's house sophomore year in high school. Her friend was spending the night. I did too. They both cuddled up next to me on the couch in the basement, one girl under each arm, running their fingers across my chest. They were talking about how they were practicing kissing and things before I came over. What did I do? I went to sleep. Two chicks ready to go, and I went to sleep. Never connected the dots until about a year later. Oh, middle school. Tried to date basically every girl in my grade without the slightest realization of self-awareness or the fact that girls talk to each other. I thought I had a solid chance with every single one of them. Cringe. I grew up in a small, backward, extremely white little town. In an attempt to bring a bit of international flair to our local high school, we hosted a model United Nations event involving several other nearby schools, some from a moderately sized city. Being a map-loving nerd, I was anxious to join in on this cosmopolitan fun, so I convinced one of my friends to join me as a co-delegate, and we set about getting ourselves a juicy country to represent. We succeeded. It was 2002, 9/11 was a fresh memory, and we drew Iraq. Brilliant. The theatrics practically wrote themselves. The first day was quiet and fairly uneventful, as most of the delegates were getting used to their roles. I got up to speak on a handful of motions, but nothing really lived up to our crap-disturbing potential as a member of George Bush's axis of evil. Determined to do more on the second day, I read through the rules of order for something I could use to generate controversy and disrupt the proceedings. That's when I saw it, a clause stating that delegates should be allowed time for silent prayer at the beginning of each session. Perfect. I told my co-delegate to bring a bath towel to school the next day and went home filled with glee. True to my word, immediately after the opening ceremonies, I grabbed my towel and my co-delegate and rose on a point of order, and with a pounding heart and a cocky grin on my face, I demanded our minute of prayer time. The head table debated for a minute, and then decided to let me have it. It was written down after all, so they couldn't do much about it. A low-level rumble of the curious conversation went through the room. With as much bravado as my 16-year-old self could muster, I marched to the front and center of the auditorium, and with 400 people watching, I whipped out my towel and laid it on the floor. Then I got down on my knees and started feverishly bowing to Mecca as fast as I could. There was dead silence in the room. For 30 seconds, my co-delegate and I, plus the delegate from Saudi Arabia who joined us in a gesture of Middle Eastern solidarity, prostrated ourselves in a well-intentioned but utterly tone-deaf mockery of the Salah. Shaking from nervousness but proud of having taken action to raise the level of realism in our little assembly, I walked back to my seat. The silence continued for a moment before the head table announced the first resolution of the day. Right then, the delegate from Libya, a guy wearing what appeared to be an authentic turban, walked up to the microphone. On the point of personal privilege, he explained that he was a real Muslim and that our cartoonish take on his morning prayers was deeply offensive. He asked us for an apology. More silence followed as every head in the room turned to look at me, and that's when I knew that everyone thought I was the worst kind of racist. Turning scarlet with embarrassment, I walked up to the microphone and mumbled a quick apology and then planted myself firmly in my seat and resolved not to speak again for the rest of the event. No one spoke to my partner or me. During the lunch break, we stood by ourselves like the pariahs that we were. Only one person, a girl from another school, came up to us to say she understood what we were trying to do and she was sorry it went so terribly. I nearly burst with gratitude. I finally reached the point now, 15 years later, where I can look back on that day and laugh about it. But for years afterward, it haunted me and would pop into my mind at strange moments to leave me shaking my head and muttering, "What was I thinking?" Being in 6th grade and completely lacking any social awareness, I thought it would be hilarious to walk up to a girl in the cafeteria and quote Napoleon Dynamite. You know, do you drink 1% because you think you're fat? Well, needless to say, I delivered the whole thing terribly and she did not get the reference. A couple of her friends later accosted me as apparently she was bulimic. I'm 22 now and I still cringe every time I think about it. It was homecoming sophomore year. I had a crush on a junior girl and planned a slow dance with her. For some context, at my school, people didn't really ask each other out, so dances were it. She is dancing with another female friend who was liked by a male friend of mine, so he goes over there and asks the other girl to dance, resulting in my crush dancing with me. We tried talking to each other, but the music was a bit loud, making it awkward. After the song ended, another slow song played. The first warning sign should have been that she left to get a drink. She was talking with the other girl at the drinks, and I left, feeling foolishly confident. I wanted to dance again, so I stayed with her group and my male friend. I didn't realize how creepy it was. I never did get that dance, but at the end of the night I asked for a ride home. We both lived close to the school. We talked on the way home, and it seemed like she enjoyed the night. Fast forward to next week and she's avoiding me. Turns out I creeped her out with my social awkwardness. I threw away a wonderful friendship in a night of terrible misunderstandings. To this day, we don't really talk outside of group settings. I called my first grade teacher Mommy in front of everyone in the class. Back in 2012, I spiraled down into deep depression and started self-harming. At the time, I didn't realize I was cutting at times for attention, but now I know it was. I remember I got yelled at for something by my dad and ran upstairs, self-harmed, then showed him saying, "You made me do this!" He cried. My mother cried. I wish I could have taken it back. Looking back now years later, I still feel terrible for what I put my parents through. All the pain I caused them. To this day, I still apologize to them for acting that way, and for how horrible I was to say those things to them. Every time they've forgiven me and tell me how much they love me, and I love them so much, but deep down in my heart, I feel like I can never forgive myself for what I put them through. That is what keeps me up at night. I promise I'm fine now with the self-harming. I haven't in years, and I never want to do it ever again. Talking to girls during AIM time. I am glad I can't access that anymore, as the password info has been seared from my memory. My ex-husband and I were in our early 20s and had just moved into a big, new, and very brightly lit apartment complex in Eugene. One night, actually like 1 a.m., he dared me to run around the entire complex with him bare naked. I should add that I'm very shy, but I can't pass up a dare when I'm certain I will win. So ready, set, go, and I flew out the door and was halfway down the sidewalk when I realized he had simply shut the door and locked it and had never followed. I had to knock and beg to be let in while he just thought it was the funniest thing ever. I could have been arrested. I used to live with my grandma. One day I was getting ready to walk over to the laundromat to move my clothes over from the washer to the dryer. As I was putting my shoes on, my grandma says, "I hope there aren't any pretty girls in the laundry room." Puzzled, I asked her what she was talking about. She motioned to my pants and told me to zip up. I looked down and lo and behold, my manhood was just hanging out for the world to see. Every time I remember that fateful evening, I lose a bit of my will to live. When I was 13, I had my first alcoholic beverage at some party. Then I came home and posted like 20 wasted status updates on Facebook, all within like 10 minutes, all purposefully misspelled and all filled with BS like how I almost fell down the stairs and how wasted I was. Man. When I was in elementary school, there was this girl that I had a massive crush on. So being the puddle of awkwardness that I am, whenever she would put her book bag in her locker, her classroom was across the hall from mine, I would say, "Happy birthday" to her. I did this every day, and it's so cringeworthy that I literally got sick from thinking about it. The cringe kept me up until 2 a.m., and as you know, if you don't get enough sleep, it can make you sick. Recently, though, that girl confronted me over Instagram about it, and I hate my elementary school self with a burning passion. Me and a coworker had a thing for a bit. As we're in the parking lot outside of the store we worked at, I'm leaning against the car trunk behind her as she's chatting with another coworker. She's wearing a top that exposes the small of her back. I reach into my pocket and I feel a ketchup packet I had stashed there during my lunch break. So I open the ketchup packet and apply some ketchup to the small of her back. She reaches back there, brings her hand in front of her face, slowly turns around and looks at me with this disgusted look on her face, and utters, "What the hell?" I can't recall what thought progression led me to doing that. My Wednesday Addams phase. I loved the movies. I loved them too much. I asked people to call me Wednesday. I tried to act like her. I even signed, like, yearbooks and crap in her name. This haunts me. I once convinced my friend to sing Hips Don't Lie with me for karaoke. I took Spanish classes, so the rapping in Spanish couldn't have been that hard. It was terrible. The entire crowd stared at us blankly the entire time. I definitely could not rap in Spanish. I tried to keep up but was really just mumbling nonsense, then stopped trying and danced awkwardly in silence until that part was over. When the song ended, only a few people clapped politely. Our friendship didn't survive that night, and I can't listen to that song anymore. In middle school, we were able to send our classmates candy canes with cards attached as a part of our pre-holiday festivities. It was well understood that if you were bold or socially inept enough to send one to your crush, you would do so anonymously. Being the 12-year-old Casanova that I was, I decided to send one to my crush. Pretty standard, except on the card I wrote, "Will you be my Christmas miracle?" and then signed my name in big bold letters at the bottom. For those of you wondering, I am indeed still a virgin, nearly 10 years on. I did karate as a kid. On Halloween night, they encouraged us to come and play on the fun jumps and bob for apples, dressed in a costume, of course. I dressed up as a ninja and was ready to kick ass ninja style. However, I was flawed. Forgot my underwear. No matter, I hardly had a conscience and gave zero fricks. In the middle of play, they stopped us to have some sort of contest where we show off our moves to the senseis one at a time. When it was my turn, I walked up and went freaking crazy, punching, spinning, and my downfall, a jumping scissor kick that exposed my 9-year-old peen flopping around. I'll never forget how shocked they all looked, and didn't even realize until reading this thread how awkward it all was. Bonus, didn't win the contest, must have not impressed the crowd. Unintentional, but I was talking about this attractive girl who was single and would be a good match for a mutual friend. My wife didn't go to the same school, so I searched Facebook and found her and showed her best pic to my wife. My wife accidentally liked the photo that was 3 years old of someone I haven't seen in 15 plus years. We aren't even Facebook friends. It was pajama day in 8th grade. Some kid was going around pulling down the pants of the boys in the courtyard. He snuck up behind me and yanked my flannel shorts down along with my boxers. I did a panic jig before picking up my pants. It was a cold morning and Mini-Me was flopping around everywhere. I was 6'3" at the time and got the nickname Biggie Smalls. In the 8th grade, they had a breakdancing circle in the gymnasium because of some event. I was always interested in breakdancing, so I was standing where I could see them spin. One of my friends then thought it would be funny to push me into the circle. I can't dance for crap. I remember the way the embarrassment felt, flooding my body like a cold yet warm shower. Still, dunno why I stood in place waving my arms in what was supposed to mimic dance for so long when nobody was forcing me to dance or stay in the circle. Still makes me cringe. Back when I was young and dumb, and not too long out of high school, I broke up with my girlfriend, now my wife, bless her, and got bored a couple of weeks later. A friend and I were talking about Craigslist and how he got laid meeting some girls on there. Being the socially inept idiot that I was at the time, I later that day decided to make a Craigslist personal ad that didn't give my personal info but had a couple of photos of me. I knew bots would reply like crazy, so I said to say something like, "I'm a real person" in the replies. The very next day, I woke up to a handful of embarrassing Facebook notifications of my ex, her mother, and her friends saying variations of "I'm a real person" on my wall and comments on my statuses about Craigslist. Christ, it was embarrassing. I've never deleted anything so quickly as I did that stupid post. I eventually realized what I had and made it up to her, and I am now happily married. It's a bit of a joke between us now, but when someone mentions Craigslist around me, I still cringe so hard, especially if I'm with her. What do people complain about that literally never happens? Drugs and Halloween candy. The only documented case was a man that poisoned his and his neighbor's children for life insurance. People trying to always sell me drugs as a kid. What I meant was how everyone says to watch out for that guy who goes, "Hey kid, want some drugs?" That is a rare occurrence that very few people witness, don't you think? Of course, people offer you in high school, college, work. I mean, what are friends for? It happened once to me when I was 15, but I just told the other kid, "No thanks, I don't smoke weed." And he was like, "Alright." A cashier gives someone a weird look because of an item that they bought or commenting on items they're buying together. Never worked as a cashier, but I'm pretty sure they don't care what you buy. And "Hi, how are you? Find everything you were looking for?" is code for hurry and pay for your stuff and then get out. Quicksand. Now that I think of it, it feels like every kid's show back then had some quicksand scene in it. They do, and I was terrified of quicksand as a kid. We went to some amusement park and there was a story walkthrough that had quicksand as a scene, and I just lost it and had to be taken home early. Adult me is very grateful that it isn't an actual thing that happens everywhere. I've read stories about people, women, yelling at men for holding the door open for them. I don't know if that's never happened, but where I am, I'm willing to bet it's never happened. I'm a woman and I hold doors open for everyone. Most people I know do. It's common courtesy. I'm British, and if someone holds the door open for someone else, you can end up in a No, after you, I insist. Infinite loop. Then eventually both people try to go through the door at the same time and end up apologizing profusely. Canada does this too, but where do you think they learned it? This literally happened to me about 10 minutes ago. Obviously, I can't leave my office again before I know they've left for the day. Claiming that the President of the United States will hijack democracy and stay president when their second term is over. Some claimed that W would do this, similar claims about Obama. If Trump manages a second term, most likely someone will claim the same about him. Living in Colorado, where people, news agencies, and clueless law enforcement constantly fear-mongering over marijuana-laced candies being given out to trick-or-treaters the entire month of October. No one has ever done that ever. Not only are edibles kind of pricey and come in limited small servings per container, 10 milligram servings, and there's normally 4 or 5 per container, but no one in the history of edibles has bought 500 of them, spent like $1,000+ and thought, let's go drug some frickin' kids. I have a friend that always goes bananas about these things. This year, I actually stopped her from talking about it and explained that no one is giving away free drugs. Drugs are expensive. Why would they do that? Especially randomly, where there's no guarantee of a return customer. She was like, oh. I used to work at a computer tech support firm. Held the job full-time for 3 years, back-to-back calls. My confession, our customers weren't nearly as technically illiterate or rude to me as my colleagues made them out to be. Actually, 99% of our customers were kind and just wanted help. I guess exaggerated stories of the call center just made for good smoke break conversation. It's like a rite of passage in the phone support world. We sometimes received a rude customer, but chances were that they had just been worn down from an earlier call with an inexperienced employee. Rarely did we get the entitled prick, and when we did, he or she was always pretty easily taken care of. I'm always wondering why the people most afraid of terrorism are the ones who live way out where the buses don't go, and almost certainly don't regularly spend time with people who don't look an awful lot like themselves. My cousin lives way out in the sticks. I mean, they have a use for the phrase, the main dirt road, because they live on a dirt road that is off of another dirt road. It makes the front page of their weekly newspaper when the grocery store has a new manager. Every second or third post on Facebook by some miracle, they have decent internet service, is some macho bullcrap about being ready for ISIS. A lot of stuff about Muslims too, even though I'd be a little surprised if any Muslims lived within 20 miles of him or if he'd ever met one. The war on Christians in the US. No one is persecuting you. Jon Stewart put it best. You have confused a war on religion with not getting everything you want. Exactly. As a Christian myself, this infuriates me to no end. So you've spent decades physically and psychologically tormenting LGBT people, let millions die of a certain virus, kick them onto the streets, and damn them to hell. And yet, when Obergefell is ruled and these people are given some basic human rights, you're the victim? You're not being persecuted. In fact, the law still allows churches to refuse to hold same-sex marriages. You're not the victim. You know what you guys are? Spoiled, rotten little brats. People getting Taco Bell craps. Y'all just got weak stomachs. Taco Bell was my absolute favorite fast food place as a kid, and I never had a problem. As an adult, I hardly ever go there. Maybe like once every couple of years, but I still have never gotten sick from it. It's probably from overeating. That'll give you the loose poops from any restaurant food. Office workers exaggerate how many hours they work. Working a 55-hour week once or twice a year doesn't mean that you do that every single week. I sit next to all of you every day and watch you put in 40-hour weeks just like me, but we still sit there interviewing job candidates and tell them how we work hard here, usually 50 to 60 hours. Why are we lying to ourselves about this? It's not a thing to brag about. When I hear people are working that hard, I just feel bad for them. They are either getting paid too little, have a crappy home life, are understaffed, or are bad at their job. All of those things that deserve pity, not praise. Academics do this a lot too. Tenured and tenure-track professors estimate that they put in 60-hour weeks regularly because they set their own research and writing schedules. It just feels like a lot more than an 8-to-5 job because you did 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon, or worked in the evening instead of the morning one day, etc. I don't think a lot of people realize that a 60-hour work week over 5 days is working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day over and over again. Yes, grad students as well. My lab mates are always telling me about how they work these long weeks, but in reality, we just work odd hours that seem long. I often work 9 to 2, go to the gym, and then work another 2 to 3 hours in the evening, because that's exactly the reason why we often schedule our own time. That's a typical workday of 8 hours, just at different times than a typical worker. Your gay marriage corrupting my kids and turning them into sexual deviants who are okay with marrying a horse and other terrible, terrible stuff. I love the "where do we draw the line" Facebook post I saw when gay marriage was legalized. Like, even as someone who's against gay marriage, you must see the difference between 2 consenting adults and a horse. Chemtrails turning my frogs gay. This is something my local community deals with, but the presence of Muslims and the implementation of Sharia law in America. I've seen countless blogs claiming that my city lives under Sharia now, though not one can cite an actual law. They're secret laws. No one can point out a court case upholding such a thing. Yet, they say, no evidence of community leaders pushing for Islamic domination. A couple even cited an instance where a local Christian church was cited for a civil property infraction, which the church admitted to, corrected the problem, and was done. But it was evidence of a war on Christianity. America sends too much money to other countries. The average American thinks that about a third of the budget goes to foreign aid. In reality, it's not even measurable, less than 1% of the annual budget. Now, the military budget, if you spend money on the military and then send your military to other countries, does that count as sending money to other countries? MSG sensitivity or allergies. MSG isn't a mysterious synthetic chemical, it's a sodium salt of the single most common amino acid in your diet. As far as your body is concerned, though, MSG doesn't exist. When it is dissolved, like in your mouth or stomach or the food that you got from the first place, it dissociates into sodium and glutamate ions. That fact isn't debatable, it's basic chemistry. Salts don't exist once they are dissolved. Read that again. MSG doesn't exist when it is dissolved. It's just sodium ions and glutamate ions. There isn't anything special about this glutamate either, and glutamate is in just about everything you eat. Cheddar cheese can be about 5% glutamate by weight. It's in broccoli and tomatoes, fish, mushrooms, and drink. It's in sushi, raw beans, chicken, and cheese, and your organic kombucha is lousy with it. Add a little sodium to any of those, ignoring the fact that they all contain sodium already. And again, as far as your body is concerned, you have the exact same thing as MSG. MSG, by way of the very definition of salt, is absolutely nothing more than its constituent parts. Nothing gestalt to see here. Let's call dissolved MSG, MSG, because talking about MSG dissolved at biological pH is like calling rain glaciers. Soy sauce is full of naturally occurring MSG, as are tamari and liquid aminos. Oh, and did I mention that the MSG they add to food is produced by fermentation the same way that soy sauce and tamari are? And drink, which also has naturally occurring MSG. And I don't know, frickin' kimchi? How about yogurt? Did you realize that when you started claiming that MSG gives you a headache that your non-fat Greek yogurt has a crapload of it? Study after study has shown that when consuming normal amounts of MSG, the only thing that consistently predicts symptoms of sensitivity is whether or not the person knows they are consuming MSG. If you believe you are sensitive to MSG, you are a victim of the nocebo effect. You cannot be allergic to MSG either. If you were allergic to MSG, then you would be allergic to the most common amino acid in your body and your primary neurotransmitter. You'd be dead. Literally, nobody has ever been harmed by MSG. I don't care how sure you are. You have no freaking idea how many foods that are MSG-free are full of natural MSG. And if you did, and you understood basic chemistry, you'd realize just how ridiculous you are being. If you believe you are sensitive to MSG, you are wrong. Stop talking about it, please. You do not know what MSG is. You don't know what you are claiming, and you don't know what you're talking about. MSG allergies equals people with a stomachache because they overate at a Chinese buffet. Stupid, selfish millennials living life for themselves and no one else, squandering all traditions. Yeah, this doesn't happen. We just keep to ourselves, and we expect you to leave us alone with your 300-year-old BS. Just because we don't want your crappy traditions to apply to us doesn't mean that we want them to stop existing. Do whatever the hell you want as long as it doesn't affect me. Millennials seems to be a derogatory term these days. I'm also a Gen Xer, and I'm over the moon at how liberated and tolerant the younger generations are. It's like seeing the future of the country in advance. Millennial here. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. Everyone on Reddit seems to think that grown adult men can never talk to children or they'll be stoned by their community. Sure, if for some reason you're trying to have a conversation alone with a goddamn tween at the park, it'll look a little fishy, but as a chubby, hairy adult man in the proper context, I'll talk to kids in passing fairly often, and no one has ever made any sort of problem of it ever. As long as the parent is there, and you're lighthearted about it, you're not going to get crucified for making a joke or funny remark to a child. I also counsel for a church middle school group, and have often chaperoned them outside of the church, and never once has anyone questioned me, restrained me, or given me any sort of dirty look for being with 1 to 6 middle schoolers. Sometimes just girls, sometimes just boys, usually both, on any given day. This one infuriates me because it's almost like these people complaining are the only ones making the situation worse. As long as you're friendly and not overstepping boundaries, you'll generally be welcomed wherever you go. Razor blades in candy during Halloween. I'm pretty sure that it only happened once, and it was some guy who did it to his own kid for insurance purposes. Immigrants taking your jobs. You would literally never even consider sweeping the streets or cleaning houses for a living, you cretin. So just to clarify, I honestly didn't mean to offend immigrants whatsoever. I work alongside many people from various countries across the world in all sorts of disciplines, and I will happily state that they are excellent at their jobs and thoroughly decent people. Strangely enough, just like the majority of people I work with. Who would have thought? The gist of my original comment wasn't to intend or imply that immigrants only do manual labor work. If it came across that way, I sincerely apologize. The mythical welfare queen in front of them in line at the grocery store buying $700 in steak with food stamps before getting in their brand new Escalade. Like, welfare fraud exists, but it is so statistically small and infrequent that it's extremely unlikely that people see it anywhere near as much as they claim to do. The closest I've ever gotten to seeing someone I knew who looked like a welfare queen, she was on WIC, so food stamps for people with infants, and had a cell phone, knockoff designer purse, nails done, and obviously dyed hair. But her parents still paid for her cell phone. She was married at this point. The bag was less than $20, and she did her own hair and nails. She worked at a salon, but anyone who just glanced at her would likely have thought that she was gaming the system. Vegans telling everyone that they're vegans. I've only ever read about it on the internet. I used to work in a vegetarian restaurant, and trust me, those vegans do exist. They'll casually mention how long it's been since they became vegan. They'll ask if you're sure something is vegan and not just vegetarian, etc. But then you also get the vegans that only really care about being vegan 70% of the time. It's usually when they're with their friends, but sometimes they'll come to ask for a vegan cheeseburger and we'll tell them that we're out of vegan cheese and they'll be like, oh whatever, I'll cheat today. Just use normal cheddar. Voter fraud affecting elections in the US. There was something like 6 documented cases this past election out of 120 million votes cast. Not to be confused with election fraud, which happens a bit more. I bring this up only because people who want to pass laws to stop voter fraud often conflate the two in order to make it sound like a more serious problem. I got a raise and now I'm in a different tax bracket so I make less. Nice humble brag, moron, that's not how taxation works in the US. We have lots of social welfare here in Australia, and it's pretty common for this to happen. If you earn a bit more, you lose your healthcare card, cheap public transport, cheap medicine. You lose your rental assistance and your family tax benefit is reduced. Then you lose exemption to the Medicare tax contribution. It's usually worth it to work, but if you're right on the border, then it can be better to work a little less. That we eat 7 spiders a year while sleeping. Australia would be dead by now. I've held doors open for probably hundreds of women in the course of my lifetime, and not once was I ever berated or given the evil eye for this sexist behavior. Everyone being on disability for a free ride and money. They are not stealing from taxpayers, so they don't have to work. The process to get disability is very, very long and difficult. Literally everyone is denied the first time and you have to fight for it. They really make sure you are disabled. Guess what? Almost every one of them wants to be able to work. Do you think they want to be disabled and held back in life? I would absolutely love to not feel how I do every day. I'd love to be a functional member of society and have a social life. You really don't get a good amount of money, not even to be worth it. However, they have enough to eat and pay a bill, maybe buy a new shirt, enough to feel like you matter at least a little. All I'm saying is that when I stopped going on subreddits and watching videos talking about social justice warriors after a month, I completely forgot about them. I'm sure once in a blue moon you'll run into one without looking for them, but otherwise they barely exist to me. I think SJWs are something that people like to be mad at, so the people complaining about them are usually the ones who look for them. Not being allowed to say Merry Christmas anymore. So often this is used as an anti-PC argument, and though I'm sure it has happened in a couple of customer service environments, it's way overblown. Hooking up with someone and getting a card that says, "Welcome to the world of AIDS." I'm pretty sure these stories were presented by pastors at church to promote abstinence. I mean, if you have HIV or AIDS and don't disclose it to a sexual partner, I'm pretty sure that's a felony. In the US, government's gonna take my guns. During the Obama administration, gun and ammo manufacturers made money hand over fist on that hysteria. You atheists pushing your belief on others, whenever the Freedom from Religion Foundation, or American Atheists, or Americans United for Separation of Church and State, or the ACLU, etc., brings a lawsuit against some courthouse or school or other public institution because of that institution's endorsement of a specific religion, normally some breed of Christianity, you hear the cry that this is atheists pushing their beliefs on the rest of us. But it isn't. It's about the separation of church and state, a fundamental principle in the US Constitution. The only position a government should take on religion should be neutral. That's secularism. I have never seen, met, or heard of an atheist who went around trying to pressure other people into atheism. We tend to be quite happy to talk about religion, and we tend to win those arguments, but that's something completely different. The standard organizations like the Freedom from Religion Foundation and American Atheists seek to enforce is secularism, which is simply that public officials cannot use their position to endorse or push their own belief system. It is not an attempt to push atheism onto one. I have never met an atheist who pushes their views, but I have met a ton who have insulted people I care about's views for no reason other than to prove a point. Not meaning to be political, but I always see posts and rallies about banning or stopping Sharia law in the US. I've yet to witness anyone supporting it. I find people afraid of it tend to be pushing for their own religion-based laws, the irony being completely lost on them. It would have to be getting put in the friend zone. No one gets put there. If you treat the guy or girl as a friend by playing it safe and taking your time, you put yourself in the friend zone. Go further and show you're interested in more than just friendship. There's no such thing as a friend zone because that implies you're entitled to date every woman you meet, and the only reason you can't date her is because of something she did. I would argue that there is a friend zone, but just not in the same sense that you see it. Of course, by no means am I saying that anybody owes anyone a date. How I see the friend zone is, for example, John likes Sally. John asks Sally to be his girlfriend. Sally declines because she just wants to be friends. John is in the friend zone. If John is mature and doesn't pester Sally about it, then he is just a guy who is in the friend zone. Oh well. However, if he starts stressing about how she led him on or something like that, then yeah, he's an entitled peen. Maybe I'm being too literal, but people always complain that it's the end of the world, but it literally never happens. It's ending, it's just going in slow motion. Girls that complain that they can't get into shape but won't lift weights because they might get bulky. If it was that easy to gain muscle, everyone would be ripped. Did you just assume my gender? LMAO, I'm pretty sure most trans people will just tell you their pronouns if you can't tell what gender they are. If you want to be a jerk and misgender them after they've told you, that's your problem. My girlfriend doesn't pass yet, and is totally aware of it, and she has no issue with someone assuming she's a feminine dude. She just politely informs them she's a trans gal. Gays ruining America? Every time there's a terrorist attack, there are a few people who claim it's a false flag. Never fails. Ask for a source and they'll give you a link to Alex Jones or some poorly put together YouTube video. Unfortunately, OP asked for things that literally never happen, and there are documented cases of actual false flag operations. People with HIV putting blood in McDonald's ketchup dispensers. Wage gap. Immigrants simultaneously taking our jobs and not working and claiming benefits. Manspreading. I experience this often enough in my major metropolitan area, so it does literally happen from time to time. However, I find that most men on public transportation or in group seating situations are quite respectful. It's just a number who are either oblivious or purposefully a jerk. The point is more, I think, that when men open their legs, it's not a sexual intimidation thing. It's an, I've been sitting with my legs together for a while and my crotch is uncomfortable. Source, male. This absolutely happens. Transgender people attacking children in bathrooms because they are allowed in the bathroom of the gender that they identify as. Avocado toast. Then again, I buy lunch at fast food places like a peasant. What do you mean it never happens? Like you've never seen it on the menu, or never ordered it, or doubt its existence in general? Or do you think that the bread should be made from avocado, but it's always made from wheat instead? Someone complained that millennials couldn't afford houses because they spend their money on things like avocado toast instead. I suppose it's not really complaining about, but when I was young, I honestly thought Elvis impersonators and quicksand would have a larger role in my life. Trans people abducting kids from restrooms. I'm a decent-looking girl with some really good-looking friends, and while I wouldn't say that it literally never happens, getting catcalled is not a daily or regular thing like many women claim. I think this depends on where you live. When I lived in a larger city, I got catcalled fairly often. The war on Christmas. No one cares who you wish what. Just stop playing a martyr. All because of a red cup at Christmas. 2 years ago, I had a coworker yell at me for buying Starbucks in a red cup. He said it offended him as a Christian. I told him not to be offended because to me the red cup stood for communism, comrade. The whole SJW feminists takeover is a load of bullcrap. This mentality is very prevalent in colleges in a lot of places, largely in part because of bad teachers. For example, Naima Lowe. People like that are very rare outside of classes like gender studies. However, the people who are like that are very loud, and since students being attacked by people or accusing people of things they are not doing on a massive scale isn't supposed to happen, people do get upset about it. Takeover? Nah. These people are, however, an issue. Mexicans stealing our jobs. Getting sick from being cold. An immigrant from Mexico literally taking a job that they desperately wanted. Vegans being loud and obnoxious about their food choices. I've had people simply say they can't eat X or Y because they're vegan, but nothing to the extent you hear about. Former vegan here, this is usually what they mean. The simple act of informing people in a relevant situation, like them offering you food or picking a restaurant or whatever. Saying, "No thanks, I'm vegan," one time will inevitably become, and then this preachy vegan SJW literally couldn't shut up about their stupid diet, and it was so in your face and annoying when they retell the encounter to their friend later. Not that it never happens, because obviously it does, but terrorism in the USA is not as huge of a problem as the media and Trump make it out to be. The terrorists in the US are all self-radicalized, so the Muslim ban wouldn't actually do anything, and the chances of a terrorist attack happening to you are very slim, and it's completely blown out of proportion. Democrats coming to take their guns. Coworkers, friends, family members, acquaintances, what do they all have in common? They complain that their bodies won't allow them to lose weight despite dieting or exercise. They don't really diet or exercise. The complaining continues forever. The government is going to take everyone's guns away. People looking up to the Kardashians. I don't think I've ever met someone who thinks they're all legitimate role models. In my experience, vegans are trying to shame meat eaters. I'm not vegan, but my friends complain about how they are so annoying and try to get people to stop eating meat. But when I ask them about it, they admit that they've never actually met someone like that in real life. Food stamp fraud and/or welfare recipients being drug addicts. I could rant about this for hours, but I need to go take a blood pressure pill since my blood boils just thinking about this ignorance. All the SJW bullcrap you see posted online I have never seen in real life. Also, I've never seen a Muslim start any trouble in real life either. I guess I must be a leftist. This will be relevant, I swear. I hate people who draw a false narrative to act like someone is being victimized or attacked verbally when in reality no one is complaining or attacking anyone. For example, if a 6-year-old kid got on the front page of Reddit for being a prodigy on the drums, there will be that one guy whose top comment is something like, "To all the people calling this kid crap at the drums, you guys don't realize professional drummers have been practicing for blah 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 insert pandering bullcrap." When in reality, the overwhelming majority of people are leaving positive feedback, if any feedback at all. And there are such a minuscule amount of people leaving negative comments. They do this for attention, and it's so obvious, yet there are so many mindless drones falling for the bullcrap. I see this a lot more on viral videos on Facebook. I just thought it would be easier to portray my analogy on the platform that we are all currently using, Reddit. Getting killed by a foreign terrorist. I live in Chicago. I'm not really worried about ISIS. but some of my coworkers think that's a real concern. Syrian refugees invading America and forcing Sharia law onto the lands of the free. Also death panels. Parents forcing children to be transgender. Fit people mocking out-of-shape people in the gym. If anything, it's the opposite. I started going to the gym regularly when I was 100 pounds overweight and got nothing but help and encouragement. Terrorism in the US. You are more likely to die in a car accident than a terrorist attack, yet I don't see people declaring war on cars. No one complains about it, but cow tipping doesn't happen. Unskilled migrants coming to the country and taking jobs. Always said by people who are still employed or unemployed unrelated to migrants, in a 99.8% white area where the nearest shop is 1.5 kilometers away. What do you swear you saw but don't have any proof of? As a child, I touched some weird pest plant in our garden. I think it stung me. Then I saw everything in inverted colors for a short time and then back to normal. I was in such shock I couldn't explain it to my mom. I just went to her crying. You probably touched Brugmansia. They are loaded with scopolamine and can cause you to see things that are not there. Inverse colors are a common hallucination from them. Brugmansia is a very common garden flower, despite its effects, because only small children will be affected by contact alone. Did you have big orange flowers that hang downward in your garden? I saw a bunch of crows, around 20, gather around in a circle. I was like, what the hell? And took a closer look to see 3 other crows in the middle of the circle, all on their backs. And some crows from the circle would hop in and try to peck at the 3 crows while they cawed and tried to defend themselves with their feet. I know crows are smart and all, but didn't expect this level of social behavior. It went on for a while before a kid ran in and scattered them all. My biology teacher in 7th grade told me she came across the same thing, called it crow court, and said that crows who broke the law were tried by others. The crimes were stealing food from young crows or mothers and killing defenseless crows. She said that sometimes they would just rip out a few feathers from the tail so they couldn't fly for a while, and sometimes they'd kill it depending on the severity of the offense. Of course, she also used a rock for deodorant and brought a bunch of animals to class without permission, so who knows. Edit. I know now that the rock is an alum. Thanks for that info. I was in line at a cafeteria. The guy in front of me was holding a pudding cup. Someone walked by, stumbled, and fell into the pudding cup guy, knocking his pudding cup out of his hand. While everyone is looking at the guy stumbling, the pudding cup went a good 2 feet straight up in the air. The pudding cup guy was totally focused and at the last second turned and caught the pudding cup behind his back. He looked at me, smiled, and that was it. No one else saw it. My friend and I were watching basketball in the early days when Charles Barkley was a panelist. He was apologizing for calling a team midgets and saying that he now knew it was offensive, but as they were going to the commercial, we both heard him say over a hot mic, "Besides, they shouldn't hate me, they should hate God." My friend and I were amazed and convinced he would be fired, but not only did we never hear about it again, but the clip also doesn't even exist online anywhere. It's as though we had a double delusion. I was having a secret smoke one night, and when I was finished, I went to put the ashtray in my hiding place on top of the high cupboard in my kitchen. Instead of getting the footstool, I was on my tiptoes and stretched up to put the ashtray there, and when I lost balance and the ashtray slipped out of my fingers, it fell down onto the floor. I ducked out of the way so I didn't get covered in ash or get hit by the heavy glass ashtray, and I heard it hit the ground behind me loudly and then clatter as it rolled. I sighed as I knew I'd have to clean up the ash from the floor and was annoyed at myself for being clumsy. But then when I turned around to see where I had heard it land, there was nothing there, or even a trace of ash on the floor, but there was nothing. It and its contents had simply vanished into thin air. I went to bed totally freaked out that night and had another look the next morning, but it was still gone and I've never seen it again since. A fat squirrel in a tree threw a piece of fried chicken at me. When I was about 6, my entire family was helping to build my grandparents a new house. I was helping my dad move some really long 2x4s from the lumber pile when a mouse ran out from under the board I had moved. Out in the middle of the woods, mice were no big deal to any of us. I did a double take though, because the mouse was freaking blue. I don't mean the sun reflected off of its fur and it had a blue sheen to it. I mean a brilliant royal blue. He was running fast, but I got my dad to notice it too, and he agreed that the mouse was really royal freaking blue. We've told multiple people, my mom included, and no one believes us, but we know we saw it. I was at the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. I walked up to the cuttlefish tank, and for some reason all 20 or so of the cuttlefish rushed over to me. It was a big tank, maybe 10 feet long. I walked the length of it and they followed me. I walked back and they followed. A few people saw it and tried it themselves, but alas, the cuttlefish only had eyes for me. My best guess as to the cause was that the guy who feeds them is my doppelganger. When I was 5, I liked to mix various liquids. Playing chemistry, I guess. My grandma let me play with all her bathroom stuff. I mixed her shampoos and creams and cleaning products, etc. I just realized now this might have been dangerous if I had mixed ammonia and bleach, for example. I swear I created a white liquid that produced a single black bubble that would come to the surface and pop at regular intervals. No one believes me, or maybe no one cares. I guess it's not that cool. When I was about 10 years old, I saw my old dog catch a crow out of the air and then just gently release it. One time when I was really young, maybe like 10 years old, I came home after school and was making myself a salami sandwich. I pulled the bag of salami out and took out 2 slices. I smacked the 2 slices together and suddenly they became one. I tried my hardest to separate them, but there was no seam or anything that I could split them up with. I even showed it to my mom, but not a single person believed me when I told them. I had fused 2 pieces of salami together. Once when I was a teenager, I was watching a movie by myself. The TV room then had 2 chairs separated by a couch. I was on the chair to the right, and at one point I laughed really hard at the movie. I heard someone else laugh and saw what seemed to be a girl my age double over in laughter in the other chair. The weird thing is, it didn't startle me. It just felt nice to share laughter. Then I realized that I was alone in the whole house and the chair was empty, so I turned off the TV and went outside. LOL. When I was about 10, they started putting missing children on milk cartons. Every morning for a while, I was looking at this boy's face on the side of the milk while I would eat my cereal. Then one day, a car went down my street while I was playing outside, and there was a boy in the back seat with his face up close to the window looking out. I'm 99% sure it was the boy from the milk carton. I told my parents, but they didn't believe me. When I was around 10 years old, I went down to a lake when I was on holiday. When I got down there, I vividly remember a massive ball of lightning just hovering, and then it struck the middle of the lake. I never ran so fast in my life back to the little house that we were staying in. A kangaroo. We don't live in Australia. There was something stuck in my grandmother's garage, crashing all over the place. I opened the door and saw it and went to tell them. It came through the door and ran/jumped across the field. Everyone thinks I was making it up, but nobody else was there to see it. While I was playing poker with a few friends, I was dealing and somehow managed to deal with a royal flush on the board, giving every person a royal flush. This was well into our game and the cards were definitely well shuffled. And don't forget, I also placed the burn cards down. The odds of this are so astronomical that apart from the friends I was playing with, no one would believe it happened and would assume I'm just a liar. One day I was looking out the window of my office and 4 semi-trucks drove past one after the other. They were in order: Costco, Costco, Cisco, and Cisco. Half the people I mention it to don't care and the other half don't believe me. A chameleon escaped from a bag when my friend was giving it to me, and it leaped into a big pile of snow. I looked around for it for a while and I couldn't find it, so I gave up. Several weeks later, the snow all melted and I was out there and I found the lizard partially frozen to the ground. I peeled him off and put it in one of those little plastic tanks and sat it by the radiator in my house. Within an hour or 2, the lizard was hopping around the cage like nothing ever happened. It lived for several years after that and was known to my friend and me as Jesus the Resurrection Lizard. A man dressed as a Confederate soldier was walking down my street as I was heading home from work. There was a school bus coming and he stopped on the other side of the road as if to let the bus pass before crossing, and I stopped at the stop sign. We looked at each other, the bus passed, and then he was gone. Not my story, but my brother's. He lost his wallet and was retracing his steps looking for it. A homeless man approached him at a coffee shop and said to him, "Don't worry, it's in the bathroom sink. Your wallet is in the bathroom sink." Later that night, he did indeed find his wallet at home in the bathroom sink. A few days later, he saw the same homeless man and thanked him for his help. The guy became really irritated and told my brother that he had never seen him before. It could have been a lucky guess, but I think magical bum makes for a better story. I was at my mom's side when she passed away. I swear seconds before she departed, I heard her and my grandmother, who had died in the 80s, behind me. Mom said, "I really look awful." And Grandma said, "It's time to go." I turned around, but the sun was coming in through the window, so a little bright. It was at that very moment that Mom passed away. I watched a white light hover in the distance between two mountains, and then it moved up, then down. At that point, I called my buddies outside to watch it. We witnessed it move from side to side, then in a perfect clockwise circle, then anti-clockwise. Next, it started doing tight figure eights one way, then back the other way. We watched it then move diagonally to the left, then back to the center, diagonally right, then back to the center. During this, we discussed the possibilities of what it could be. A helicopter, a skilled pilot, a series of spotlights, the speed at which it moved, and the fact that it didn't waver slightly, and the fact that the motion was so fluid left us without an explanation. As we discussed and watched the movements, the light moved even faster up and down and diagonally. It then sped off to the right at a speed that we could barely focus on. It was now about 3 kilometers on the other side of the mountain, and then suddenly it took off straight up and out towards the stars till it was gone. When I was about 10 or 11, we were having a get-together at my grandma's house for the holidays. All of us cousins played all day, and when night fell, we played hide-and-seek. While the adults smoked and drank up by the house, we stayed at the back of the property just having a good time. I was hiding in between a bush and the property fence when I heard the strangest sound. It was almost a scream, both happy and miserable at the same time. I jumped up and kinda shouted. All my cousins heard it and we all saw it too. It was an animal on 2 legs, and it ran off with a really jerky motion. Being the oldest by about 3 years, I calmed down the crying little ones and explained as best I could that it was just someone trying to scare us. I've had nightmares about that sound in my mind, and it seems a grotesque mimicry of our joyous screams and laughter as we played. None of my cousins today will admit to even remembering the incident, although the adults remembered the commotion it caused. I was snorkeling in Hawaii once, and I swear I saw something that looked like a clear chameleon, but as soon as I got close, it buried itself in the sand. I still vividly remember discovering a new species. When I was 10, we had a 14-year-old German Shepherd who was getting very sick. I was home alone momentarily as my mom went to the neighborhood to pick up a book or something. Our German Shepherd came over, convinced me to walk outside with him, and started licking my hands. Looked at me and ran away jumping the fence, and he never came back. He was so loyal and good that to this day, no one believes me and thinks he was stolen because he would never leave. I'm almost certain he did that because he didn't want us to see him die, and he wanted to go to this massive forest area and do his thing. I miss you, buddy. A monkey jumping from car to car on a busy street. I could probably draw a sketch of it even though this happened about 5 years ago. Definitely one of the most odd things I saw. Unfortunately, everyone thinks I'm telling a bad joke when I explain what I saw, or they just nod it off and continue not giving a frick. I was out for a walk late one night. This was in rural Illinois, so there was nobody else out. I noticed from a distance that there were these squirrels just standing in the middle of the road. Thought to myself that this is strange. When I got closer, I noticed that there were 3 squirrels standing around a cat that was laying down. I thought for a minute the cat was dead, but when I got closer and walked past them, the squirrels and the cat followed me with their eyes, none of them moving a muscle. It was a look like, move it along, nothing to see here. Still, to this day, I think of how bizarre that was. After my grandmother died, she left her rocking chair that she had rocked me to sleep in as a little boy. I kept it in my bedroom as a reminder of her. Not long after she passed, I would wake up and see her quietly sitting in the rocker, smiling. We'd have a conversation just as we did when she were alive. This recurred regularly night after night, with all sorts of discussions, until one night when she disappeared from the rocking chair right before my eyes, never to return. I can't prove any of it, of course, but if those nightly visitations were all dreams, they were hands down the most vivid series ever. The sad part is that after she stopped appearing, that rocker seemed very empty, and I realized how much I missed her. When my grandfather died, my 12-year-old self was quite upset. I asked my dad for 2 dimes. I know it's odd. I put one in his breast coat pocket and held one myself. Years later, my whole family has been finding dimes everywhere in random spots. They attributed this to Grandpa looking over us. Kind of turned into a thing. On that token, my dad forgot about the double dime I requested at Grandpa's funeral. I brought it up what happened at the family dinner recently, and they think I made it up. Ball lightning. It was right after a thunderstorm passed by. I could see floating orbs in the sky. There were a couple of cars parked by an open field and people were watching this happen, so I parked and got out to join them. We all sort of just looked on in silence until they winked out one by one. There were at least 10 of them and they seemed to fly together in patterns. Sometimes they were fast, other times they slowed down or reversed direction. They seemed small, but I could tell this wasn't because they were far up in the sky. If I were to guess, they'd be about the size of a basketball, maybe a little larger. The whole ordeal lasted only 30 minutes. We then all got in our cars and left. I tried taking pictures, but it was dark and the lights were too faint to make out. I should record a video instead. I noticed someone was recording them at the scene, so I kinda hoped I'd see it online at some point, but it's been 2 years now, so I guess not. I've had glasses since the 3rd grade. I was playing tackle football with friends after school, tackled one of my friends, had a really big collision, and for a second I regained full eyesight. Then I blinked and it was gone again. My sister and I both had this before. It is often unprovoked and a rare occurrence. We just blink and wham, our vision is 20/20. Then we blink too soon and it's over. I remember grocery shopping with my mother once when I was about 13 and I blinked and suddenly had perfect vision. I saw everything clearly and could read all the labeled sections in the back. I blinked and everything was blurry again. I was amazed and also extremely disappointed that it disappeared so quickly. Years ago, when my mom was pregnant with me, she saw a monkey in the tree outside of her house. She went to tell everyone, but no one believed her. Sure, pregnant lady. But sure enough, the news that night had a story about a zoo breakout. A driver in my hometown, suburban New Jersey, saw a giraffe run across his path. He immediately pulled over for a cup of coffee and told people he thought he was hallucinating. They tried to call him an ambulance, but then they saw police cars going by. Turns out the circus was in town and had lost its giraffe. I was watching a football game a couple of years ago, and in one of the shots where they panned over the crowd, I saw a girl look straight at the camera and mouth my name. Scared the crap out of me, but when I rewinded it, the seat was actually empty. Maybe I just need to find someone to fill that seat. I saw a pterodactyl flying overhead one time. A giant. This guy's feet were as long as a pillow, and his hands made a newspaper look small. My friends think I exaggerated how large he was. I don't. Sometime in the early 2000s, my wife and I went to an Eminem concert at the House of Blues on Sunset in LA. Anyway, the entire show, maybe 90 minutes, there was a guy dancing on stage in a full mummy suit, and he is doing really awkward and funny dances that you wouldn't expect from a background dancer at a rap concert. But hey, he's in a mummy suit, so whatever. The show ends, and Eminem screams into the mic, "Do y'all want to know who the mummy is?" The crowd cheers, and he screams, "Dustin Hoffman!" He pulls a zipper in the back of the costume and out comes an extremely sweaty, 60-something-year-old Dustin Hoffman. The crowd goes into stunned silence for a few seconds and then erupts in cheers. My wife and I just kind of looked at each other in disbelief, and when I tell people, they always say something like, "Oh, it must have just been someone found that looked like him." But that guy was Dustin Hoffman, and no, I have no proof. Years ago, I left my laptop open at a Starbucks while I left to get my drink. When I returned, Bill Murray was sitting in front of my screen tapping away on the keyboard. I looked over his shoulder and he anonymously posted a number of stories regarding encounters with himself. They ranged from tackling others, stealing food, and other fun oddities. When he finished, he closed my laptop, stood up and looked me in the eye. Then he said, "No one will ever believe you," and walked away. When I was about 7 or 8, I was at the park close to my house, and I swear on my life I saw a pterodactyl. Not a big hawk or a plane or some crap, a whole-ass pterodactyl. I saw Bart Simpson washing his face in someone's house while I was sitting in my dad's car. I was sitting outside at a restaurant waiting for my food, and a flying ant landed on my table. Cool, a flying ant. You don't see that too often. The flying ant then wiggled a wing into its jaws and ripped it off. What the hell? Then it wiggled its other wing into its jaws and ripped it off too. I was obviously losing my crap as other patrons began to stare at my reaction. The ant reflected on its new position in life and walked off into the sunset. A friend of mine is absolutely convinced that she saw William Shatner in an IKEA once. She has no proof, but she still stands by her claim almost a year later. I was riding in the back seat of a friend's car one night. I looked over to the side of the road and saw a dog. Its body looked something like an English bulldog. As we got closer, I could see that it had a human face. That freaked me out a little bit. I swear that one day in the middle of a pretty bad snowfall in Montreal, I was driving to meet a friend and I saw a guy on a unicycle carrying a trombone. He was wearing ski goggles and just going down the street heading somewhere. The tire on his unicycle was pretty thick, so I'm guessing this was his weather beater unicycle. When I got to my friend's place and explained it, they thought I was just trying to be funny. I swear it happened. I was a student at Central Michigan back in 2000, and I was driving back to campus. A pickup truck began tailgating me really closely on the rural 2-lane road. Like anyone, I was getting all grumpy and offended over it. This went on for several minutes, and finally I decided I was going to brake check him. I looked in my rearview mirror and readied the brake foot. I did not see the truck on my tail. Rather, I saw him sliding upside down on his roof through someone's field, a cloud of dust rolling along behind him. I continued driving as this didn't immediately register with me what was going on. That guy must have just ended himself. Another 10 minutes down the road, my brain clicked back on and I got that awful feeling like I saw someone get super injured and I just ignored it. I turned around and drove like a maniac back to where I thought I had seen the wreck. Got there, no emergency vehicles, no upside down truck. I can still vividly see his truck upside down and the dust cloud. When I was a kid, and I was living in Egypt, I went scuba diving around the reefs in Alexandria, and I saw this really creepy yellowish-brownish 2-foot-long serpent thing that looked back at me. I immediately got out of the water and swam to shore. I looked it up later, and turns out what I encountered was a Gunther's sea snake, apparently one of the rarest sea snakes in the world. 10 years ago, I spent a summer in Alaska in a small coastal town. For several nights, a feral cat would sulk around my house and make weird noises. It sounded as unfortunate as it looked, suffering from possible mange, a bad leg, patchy fur. Then one night I nearly stepped on its dead body while walking home. Quickly I called for my friends in the house, and they brought out a garbage bag and a shovel. We poked the cat with a shovel looking for any identification or sign of life. None. We found a spot off the dirt path, tied it up in the garbage bag and buried it. About a week later, walking with my friend back home in the dark, I heard a familiar sound. I raised a flashlight. Ahead of me by no more than 20 feet was that fricking cat. Same messed up fur and injuries. I was stunned. I turned to look at my friend and he was mortified. We watched in silence as the cat just casually walked away out of view of the flashlight, never to be seen again. To this day, I have no explanation. Maybe it was a sibling that happened to look exactly like the one we buried and suffered the same injuries. Guess this might be why I'm more of a dog person. When I was 5, I was playing in my backyard. The yard was long and ended in a fence and a gate. A laneway ran parallel to both. I remember looking up at one point and seeing 3 red balloons floating there, tied to strings, disappearing behind the fence. I was curious and started walking towards the balloons, but suddenly I felt a chill up my spine and experienced goosebumps for the first time in my life. I stopped halfway down the yard. Then a clown's head popped up and turned to look at me. It was white, bald, with red hair on its sides. There was something deeply sinister about it, like I was nothing more than prey to it, nothing more than an insect. We stared at each other for what seemed like a long time. I was too scared to move, rigid as a board. The clown smiled and vanished below the fence. The balloons stayed in place. I heard the latch on the back gate start to rattle, so I ran into my house, scared and crying for my mom. She did not believe me but went out to look. I begged her not to. I cowered in the kitchen. It seemed like forever, but she came back. For a second, before she realized I was looking at her, I thought she seemed unsettled. But there were no balloons and no one down in the lane, she declared with a smile, then dismissed it as overactive imagination. I had some nightmares about the experience for the next few weeks. My mom stayed up with me, trying to convince me it was all in my imagination. The nightmares and memory of the experience sank into my subconscious. Until years later, as an adult, we watched the miniseries It as a family. When I saw Pennywise, goosebumps ran up my spine. I was petrified, rigid as a board again. I looked over at my mom to tell her that this is what the clown had looked like. She looked unsettled, and when our eyes met, I knew she had seen it too. When I was around 10 years old, I saw a strange black object hovering right above my friend's house in broad daylight. It had the shape of a triangle, and it was not moving at all. It stayed there for about 20 seconds and then disappeared. I still have no explanation at all for it. My grandpa died when I was about 3 years old. Apparently, whenever my family visited him, I would always be glued to the window watching him mow the lawn. The day after he died of an unexpected heart attack, I distinctly remember seeing him out in his front yard mowing the lawn. Everyone else dismissed it, and it was probably just a little kid seeing things, but it seemed so real. When I was in the 2nd grade, I lived in Korea. My dad was in the army. We didn't have a dryer. Instead, we had a clothesline for the front yard. Picture in your mind a squat duplex with a flat roof. The front yard has a high sturdy wall of stone and a giant tree. Two poles are dug into the ground for the clothesline. I'm outside playing and not really paying attention to my surroundings. I turned and I could see my reflection in its eyes. A huge spider about a foot in diameter, it was mostly yellow with black and a small touch of red. I screamed and ran inside to get my dad. When we came back out, it was gone. All that was left was the web stretching across the clothesline poles. I asked my mom about it recently. She remembers seeing it around the giant tree occasionally. I wish we had pictures. It was one of my favorite stories to tell students. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.